sa kaganapan. Harapin hamon ng bagong panahon, bigyang ilaw ang tarimlan. Magsuri pag-isipan ng hulmahan ng ating linangan sa puntahan tungkol sa dulaan. Ituloy ang paghahabi ng kamalayan, paghahabi ng karanasan, paghuhubog ng kasaysayan, tayo't makilahok sa Tampok Sabadulaan. Ha 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 ha. Aani, 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 ani ng sining ng taong bayan. Ani ng sining, ani ng galing, diwa at damdamin ng taong bayan. Ani ng anyo ng ating pagkatao, ani ng sining ng taong bayan. Ani, 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 ani ng sining ng taong bayan. Ani ng liwanag ng kamalayan, ani ng diwa ng taong bayan. Ani ng gabay sa ating paglalakbay, ani ng sining ng taong bayan. Ani, 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 ani ng sining ng taong bayan. Ani, 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 ani ng sining ng taong bayan. Ani ng likha ng taong malikhain, ating anihin at ihahain. Ani ng saysay, ani ng salaysay, aning kasaysayan ng taong bayan. Ani ng sining ng taong bayan. Ani ng sining ng taong bayan. Kamalayan, liwanagan, pagdiriwang. Ani, 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 ani ng sining. Ani ng sining ng taong bayan. Ani, 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 Pagsanib mga bayani ng sining at kultura, lumikha ng sandigan tungo sa kaganapan. Harapin hamon ng bagong panahon, bigyang ilaw ang tarimlan. Magsuri pag-isipan ng hulmahan ng ating linangan sa puntahan tungkol sa dulaan. Ituloy ang paghahabi ng kamalayan, paghahabi ng karanasan, paghuhubog ng kasaysayan, tayo't makilahok sa Tampok Sabadulaan. Ha, ha. Magandang hapon po sa lahat at salamat sa inyong paglahok at pakikinig dito sa Tampok Sabadulaan, Saturday Conversations on Theater o kuntahan tungkol sa dulaan tuwing Sabado. Ang Tampok ay isang flagship project ng National Commission for Culture and the Arts, Committee on Dramatic Arts. Simulan po natin ang hapong ito sa isang pagpupugay sa ating bansa at sa ating bandila. Mga kaibigan, para magbigay ng pambungad na pagbati, narito ang
hapon, kanatong tanan.
Committee on Dramatic Arts, si Ginoong
Welcome
Felimo
to the fourth session of Tampok Sabadulaan, Saturday Conversations on Theater. Tampok is the flagship project of the National Committee on Dramatic Arts of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, which aims to create a space for the reflection on some of the country's best practices in building a curriculum for theater praxis and to examine the challenges in the formation of a curriculum on Philippine theater. This weekly conversation is part of the long-term goal of the NCCA-CDA in crafting a blueprint of an Academy of Philippine Theater. This afternoon, we will listen to a panel of experts from the Academe to share about their insights and perspectives in the envisioned Academy on an academic standpoint. To our distinguished speakers today, thank you very much for sharing your time and expertise with us. With your years of theater practice in an academic institution, your insights will be very helpful in shaping the blueprint of an academy. To our virtual audience and theater practitioners, thank you for your continued presence during our weekly conversation. We dream and we work together for this academy to happen in our lifetime. In behalf of the NCCA National Committee on Dramatic Arts, I would like to virtually welcome you all to the fourth online conversation of Tampok Sabadulaan, Saturday Conversations on Theater, with this week's theme, Theater and Education, in relation to establishing the Academy of Philippine Theater. Be inspired of the Filipino artistry and creativity. Tara na't makitampok. Maayong hapon kanatong tanan.
Para magbigay ng synthesis mula sa nakalipas na Tampok Sabadulaan, narito ang convener ng Tampok, si Ms. Dessa Quesada Pam.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maayong hapon. I am coming from Dumaguete, and it is a joy again to be on our fourth installment of our webinar and conversation series. And I just wanted to give a little overview of where we are and also to share yung synthesis that was prepared by Dr. Amihan Bonifacio Ramolete. So share screen for the PowerPoint, please. So just to again to reiterate, this is so far going to be a 9-week conversation, series of conversations. Next slide. So we started on August 1 with establishing the rationale, and so all of these are still available sa Facebook page ng NCCA Committee on Dramatic Arts. But in our first session, Gardy Labad tried to present a very massive and multi-layered framework that we could start our conversations around on. And then August 8th, we invited several people, including si Dr. Glessy Atienza, Professor Arvin Villalon, and Brother Carl Gaspar, to give us certain, again, overview of things that have happened as part of the flagship projects of the Committee on Dramatic Arts, as well as the study on Philippine values and the rich history of the cultural work and Philippine theater in relation to conscientization and social movements. No? And then last week, we were joined by a really wonderful panel that spoke specifically on the theme of heritage and theater and what it can contribute to the discussion on establishing the Academy for Philippine Theater. So next slide. We had Bernardo or Buboy Aguay from Bicol, Nestor Horfilia from Davao, Joey Nival Lianza from Leyte in Tacloban, and Marialito Luzpo from Bohol. So 2 of them are basically in the academe and 2 are more community-based. Next slide. So the synthesis is really prepared by Amihan. So I'm just going to outline some of the points that she made. No? So the main theme na lumabas is really the paghahabi, no? The weaving of the various experiences. No? So ito'y paghahabi ng karanasan at kaisipan. So she came up with 3 basic ideas. Ang teatro ay buhay. Theater is alive. Despite this pandemic, no? And ang teatro ay buhay. It is also life. And ang teatro, ang ating pamana. It is our heritage. It is something that we bestow upon our future generations. Next slide. So part of the discussion also, and for the succeeding panels, is really to focus on what can our respective fields contribute to the discussions on the establishment of the Academy for Philippine Theater. So for the heritage and theater, these are some of the points that were made by the group last week. No? Kahalagahan, ang mayambag sa paghuhubog ng linangan or Academy ng Dulaang Pilipino ay kahalagahan ng kasaysayan, kultura, pamana at kaalamang bayan sa paglikha ng sining. So that is the basic premise. History, culture, and heritage is important. And the second point is really heritage as part of the material source. No? The historical at cultural na material na siyang nagsisilbing inspirasyon ng mga pagtatanghal at malikhaing proseso ng artista ng teatro. So it is both an inspiration to performance but also the artistic and creative process itself. The third point is, sa tulong ng teatro ay napapangalagaan at napapanatiling buhay ang lokal na kultura at napapalakas din ang kultural na identidad ng komunidad. So the integral role of theater in promoting cultural identity. Promoting but also developing. And the fourth point is that mahalagang mapanatiling buhay at maisadokumento ang mga tradisyong pasalita at pasulat, so both oral and written traditions, dahil dito nakapaloob ang katutubong dunong ng mga tao. So again, both theater as a way of documenting oral and written traditions because of the need to document indigenous wisdom. Next slide. So the second question often really revolves around what ought to be taught in the academy. No? So these are some of the points that were raised from last week. Kahalagahan ng pananaliksik, the value and importance of research, particular ang field research, localized historical and archival research, and ethnography. Bunga ng pananaliksik ang pagpapalaganap ng kultura at pamana sa pamamagitan ng mga pagtatanghal. Second point is napakahalaga din ng cultural mapping. And again, this is, I think, across the fields, not only in theater, this has been recognized as a fundamental need in all that we do. Upang makita ang dami at ang lawak ng mga pagtatanghal at gawaing kultural at panteatro. And the third point is that kailangang palakasin ang kakayahan sa pagdodokumento ng documentation. This is a skill that really needs to be elevated, upgraded, and learned by more. No? Ng mga manggagawang kultural at panteatro upang maipasa ang mga kaalaman at karanasan sa susunod na henerasyon. I think more than ever, the need to be able to really document and share this and provide a resource for the future generations is emphasized. No? Next slide, please. So the next question is really around the structure. What will the linangan or the academy look like? And this became very interesting. No? One idea that came out is that it has to be multi-campus. Maring gawing inspirasyon ng plano ng Mindulani, a network of Mindanao theater groups, way back in 2002, no, which was called the Mindasilang. There's a suggestion na mungkahi magkaroon ng 4 na campus sa Mindanao na nahahati ayon sa sumusunod na gawain. So one campus can focus on Mindanao theater repertories. Another could be on theater advocacies for cultural survival. The third is cultural action in the grassroots. And the fourth campus could focus on multicultural youth theater for building culture of peace. And next slide. So sa pagbubuo ng organisasyong mamamahala, this is really in relation to who will be administering or managing this academy. Ang ilang batayan na dapat isaalang-alang ay ang pagpapahalaga at paggalang. So the valuing and respect for, one, pagkakaiba-iba ng kultura or the cultural diversity. Second is katutubong pananaw at kamalayang Pilipino. Third is multi at interdisciplinaryong pananaw, interdisciplinary perspectives. And the fourth principle is partisipasyon at kolaborasyon. Fifth is ang pagpapahusay ng kakayahang kultural or cultural competence ng mga manggagawang kultural at panteatro. And next slide, please. So ilang mahalagang punto at tanong na lumutang sa malakihang talakayan. Or this was some of the open forum points. No? So in relation sa pandemic, sa panahon ng pandemya ay maaring pagtuunan ng pansin ang pagdokumento at pagsasaayos ng mga materyales ng mga grupo at pagtatanghal. Sabi nga nung iba, during the pandemic, bigla tayong nagkaroon ng panahon to work on our backlogs, and maybe some of this work could be centered around documenting the work that we have done. Second is, kailangang alamin kung paanong mapaghahalo ang paggamit ng digital at traditional na pamamaraan ng komunikasyon at pagtatanghal. So I know we are all grappling with the use of and migration and pivoting to the digital platform. But theater in our hearts remain to be connectional, physical, and interactive na space. So how can we try to balance those two? Ang sasailalim sa mga pagsasanay sa linangan ay manggagawang kultural at panteatro na nakikiniig sa komunidad. So also that we should bring in cultural workers who are part of the community. And one other from the open forum still is ang konsepto ng bayan o pambansa ay sinasalamin ng hinabing karanasan ng mga rehiyon. That this should not be dictated by any one center or any one group. No? And finally, the question of sino ang maghahabi ng lahat ng ito upang maisakatuparan ang pagtatag ng linangan. In other words, the strands are being laid out in every webinar, in every Tampok Sabadulaan, and by many other cultural workers and theater artists. But who will decide anong importante, no? At ano yung ipapasok talaga sa ating linangan. So next slide. So this is the final slide that Ms. Amihan, Dr. Amihan also shared. As a final note, she wrote as a synthesis point, isang pagtatatag ng linangan ay magiging daluyan ng karanasan, kaalaman, kakayahan at kamalayan ng mga manggagawang kultural at panteatro na siyang magiging pamana ng komunidad ng teatro sa susunod na henerasyon at sa bayan. So doon nagtatapos ang ating synthesis at maraming salamat. Slide. Okay, ngayon naman po ay para dalhin naman tayo doon sa paksa natin ngayong linggo. Tatawagin ko naman si Ginoong Ricardo Gardi Labad for the exposition for this week's topic. No? Siya po ang ating Tampok Conference Director. Gardi?
Salamat, Desa. Naririnig ba ako?
Yes.
Okay. Magandang hapon sa ating lahat. What we heard are the syntheses of the last two Sabadulaan sessions, focusing on context and heritage, informing the vision of an Academy of Philippine Theater. Yung mga inputs na yon, itong pampapakinggan natin ngayon, makakatulong sa pag-inform ng identity, vision, programs, and structures of this plan. In the very first Sabadulaan session, we outlined the rationale of this project, describing various convergent reasons why the time for such an institution has already arrived. Since the 70s, colleges, universities, drama schools have developed theater courses in Manila and in some cities outside the capital. Training, curriculum building, pedagogy, and linkage and networking. Move the slides, please. Ng mga images ng mga eskwelahan na nag-offer ng mga drama courses sa kanilang lugar. But mostly, these are in the main capital regions or in the capital or in some cities in the region. During the life of the Committee on Dramatic Arts of the NCCA, we have been seeing the growing need to develop a venue for a continuing, sustaining, and evolving exchange of these initiatives. Pwede nang bilisan ng slides. But you also see the need to respond to a great divide between opportunities for theater training in the capital and those in the regions. Many quarters in the country are appealing for more inclusiveness for such opportunities. Nakikita niyo po sa slides yung mga stated mga needs ng iba-ibang mga grupo. Today, ayan po, all these groups and institutions in place have developed their own achievements and results. And lahat ng ito, heritage theater groups, professional theater groups, community independent theater groups, mga school theater groups, mga professional theater groups, they all aspire to protect, revitalize, sustain local heritage They aspire to express local needs and aspirations. They all aspire to continuously provide venues for honing the art of the theater and to create gainful livelihood through the theater. Next slide. And hopefully, all of these theater groups, because of this plan, can share what they have evolved, orientational goals, their artistic programs, their pedagogy programs, and organizational strategies. Today, slide please, we are super eager to listen to how extensive experiences from our invited experts from various academies will inform their proposals or visions or mandates of a future National Academy of Theater in the Philippines. Slide, please. So there, theater in the communities, theater in the school, through the NCCA-CDA, nakita po namin ang pangangailangan na makabuo nitong institusyong ito. Slide, please. Okay. Especially sa areas ng aesthetics, pedagogy, para maging bukal na a wellspring to upgrade our theater practice all over. So now, these academies, where theater programs have been based for many decades, most definitely have accrued distinguished, trailblazing, effective, and successful program offerings in their respective sites of. We deem it essential that their voices of experience will lend their generous spirit and achievements in the curriculum building, in the art of the theater in the Philippines, so that we can all shape together and realize the vision that is the Academy of Philippine Theater. Maraming salamat.
Divina Gracia, the Artistic Director of the University of San Agustin. Today's moderator is Eric Divina Gracia, the Artistic Director of the University of San Agustin Little Theater since 2010. He finished AB Political Science and Law at the University of San Agustin and Masters in Theater Arts Administration at Eastern Michigan University as a Fellow of Ford Foundation International Fellowship Program. He was Vice Chair of the NCCA National Committee on Dramatic Arts and current Vice President of Tiatco, the Western Visayas Theater Network. His recent works are collaborations with the members of the University of San Agustin Little Theater, devised plays that reflect the issues facing the nation and its youth. Eric is the recipient of the University of San Agustin Alumni Achievement Awards for Culture and the Arts, the 10 Accomplished Youth Organizations Award for USALT, and the 10 Outstanding Students of the Philippines.
Good afternoon, maayong hapon, magandang hapon po sa kanilang lahat. This is Eric Divina Gracia from Iloilo City. I hope everyone is well and ready for our Sabadulaan. And we have very interesting panelists, we have very interesting guests, educators, mentors, academicians, scholars. It's interesting, of course, to hear the side of university praxis in the theater, because the university is, very an organic institution to host theater, and we can learn from the theater practice of our panelists so that we can come up insights in developing a National Academy for the Theater. We have with us our synthesizer this afternoon, who will deliver, of course, a synthesis after our panelists provide their inputs. Our synthesizer is Hobart P. Savior. Hobart serves as Vice President for External and Cultural Affairs of Liceo de Cagayan University, and he is the founding director of the Savior Stage. In 2014 and up to 2017, Hobart directed the Mindanao production of Sining Ay Buhay, Buhay ang Sining, to celebrate the Cultural Center of the Philippines, Cultural Exchange Department's outreach program 40th anniversary, which toured in Batangas City, Baguio City, Bulacan, Iligan City, General Santos City, Tagum City, Bohol, and Iloilo City. Just this February 15 to 21, BART presented the same production in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Cultural Center of the Philippines at the Little Theater CCP and Tawi Tawi. Hobart authored institutionalized programs such as the Lambago Film Festival Northern Mindanao, formerly known as Cinemagis, and CDO People's Gala and the Lambago Art Awards. Hobart also served as festival director of Tanghal, the University Theater Festival in Mindanao, Tampok Mindanao Theater Convergence, Timbayayong Mindulani, and Bart also served as assistant director and actor to Mr. Vic Asedillo Jr.'s Cinemalaya 2016 entry, Lando at Bugoy, and to Farm Film Festival entries, Kakampi and Kamungay. Bart has performed for the Singaporean Initiation International Festival and acted in the Philippine film All Things New. Ladies and gentlemen, Hobart P. Sabior. Hobart, mayong hapon. Good afternoon.
All right. Thank you very much. Maayong hapon sa atong mga panelists and guests of Tampok 2020 or Sabadulaan. And I'm so happy to be with you, especially with our panelists and also to all our viewers, our theater arts enthusiasts. I think they will learn a lot from this Sabadulaan. Maayong buntag ug daghang salamat. Maayong hapon pala, daghang salamat.
Thank you very much. So Bart, madamo man nga salamat. This afternoon, we have with us 4 panelists who will, of course, express their insights on theater and education in relation to the establishing of an academy in Philippine theater. They come from the country's best universities and the best theater groups as well. And we are so eager to listen to them and their insights on the topic. So without further ado, Diretso na ta, let's proceed. Our first speaker is, or panelist is Artistic Director Founder of the Integrated Performing Arts, or IPAG, founded the pioneering Cultural and Art Studies program of the MSU Iligan Institute of Technology, or MSU-IIT. His over 50 full feature groundbreaking productions have drawn wide acclaim in over 100 cities in Europe, US, Pacific, and Asia, and in extensive road shows across the Philippines. He keynoted conferences and lectured here and abroad in Sharjah, Shanghai, Bangkok, Singapore, Ho Chi Minh, Yogyakarta, New Delhi, and Taipei, among others, besides being awarded fellowships to Sweden, Japan, and the US. The Cambridge International Biographic Center's Who's Who in the World lists him among the 2,000 outstanding intellectuals of the 21st century in its first edition back in 2001. He was also featured as Defender of Our Heritage in Fukien Times Philippine Yearbook and the CCP Philippine Encyclopedia of the Arts. He won the Palanca, first prize, CCP Kantimpala, UP Likhaan, and was awarded the CCP Pilak Father Francisco Demetrio and SM Global Pinoy. The Writers Union of the Philippines, or UMPIL, presented him the Francisco Balagtas Award, the highest distinction given a creative writer in both English and Filipino, preceding the Gawad Pedro Bucaneg conferred to the IPAG. His transcreation and distillation define his dramaturgy. He is author of 6 books and numerous plays, essays, including scholarly works, widely anthologized. The CCP awarded him with the 2020 Gador for his outstanding achievements, complementing another Gador received by the IPAG and the Gawad CCP para sa Sining, also the highest distinction for a Philippine performing company. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Dr. Stephen Fernandez, but to everybody here in the theater, Tibo. Sir Tibo, mayong hapon.
Mayong hapon tanan. Good afternoon, friends. What I'm going to do this afternoon is simply add to what has been already marvelously presented by earlier panelists. And I have here my PowerPoint. So what I will do is simply will add to what already has been presented earlier and my own thoughts of what an academy should be. So I hope everything is clear, no? Okay lang. So my point is towards an academic performance and theater. And I'll make this short so there will be more time for Q&A. However, the longer papers of all of these have already been submitted to the committee, to Gardi, and my own thoughts of what an academy should be. Perhaps this can be invaluable additions to what we already have discussed. So we start off with the academy. What is it? An academy of theater. So an academy is supposed to be based or determined by what? Oh, not by who, the function, etc. No. Why do we put up an academy? What for? Okay. Let me see. Okay, what needs to be addressed? But rather than go through this timeline, the why now will answer the questions of how. So from the academy, what, why, we have now how. But my question now, is this the true timeline, the logic of putting up an academy? So I'm trying to simplify things here. So let's get into the next. Therefore, what I would present now is instead a reverse. We start off with the function, with the needs, before going into the academy, the what, rather than starting with the academy and going into the why. So how do we now conceive, and how do we now implement, and how do we now put this into execution in tangible terms, in outcome terms, in mission terms? First, we will have to discuss what an academy is. So what is an academy? For example, academy is an institution that has been there to put out performance, but under performance is a subgroup called theater. And the theater presents, well, plays, musicals, street dancing, parades, which are what I would categorize to be products. And you have here the description, the characteristics of what theater brings out. But also in performance are other multi and transmedia forms like dance, music, poetry, performance, etc. And of course, what we have, rituals and ritualized events. Also performance. So will the academy refer to all of this now? Or are we simply putting limits to a framed performance like the theater that we have? So here is the characteristics of what an academy is. There is a classic pedagogy. We go back to the classics of Euripides, Sophocles, Aristotle, and then the French Academy. They do have a formalized pedagogy. However, do we have a formalized pedagogy in Philippine performance culture? An academy puts in structured pedagogy, working within a system with an explicitly defined hierarchy and order. The French Academy had Cardinal Richelieu, for instance, working out what the French government really wanted. This kind of a mindset, this kind of a construct, evolved for Renaissance mindsets. Hence, there is the logic, modern logic of science and art. Is this true for all of us? And for among the Asians, long traditions of Asian cultures embed practice that we call classic. Question now, do we have the classic in Philippine performance culture that one can embed now in an academy? So these are only food for thought. I continue. Practice, pedagogy, and production are constructs that evolve from culture. Again, practice, pedagogy, and production are constructs that evolve from culture. It is not the other way around. Although there is that by mutual collaboration between culture and form. So we now start with why, and the function of why an academy is necessary. So I'd like you to get through the whole arts and culture landscape of the Philippines. This is our cultural industry, so to speak, or our cultural practice. And I will not go through them one by one because it will take time. I only have 20 minutes. Okay, we have performance for social action, performance in education, performance as livelihood, and performance as cultural marker. Okay. Therefore, with this, for example, how are we now going to strengthen all of this? And our answer at this point is, of course, the academy. How? And the academy will have certain executory actions, programs that will try to implement, that will try to realize all of this. Why in culture? Okay, cultural and performance studies, heritage studies, management and promotion, education, creative writing, performance, craft enhancement, design, etc. But the bottom line is integrity of culture. What we do have here in the Philippines are various cultures and various constructs. That's why performance form, look at the emphasis on form and its practice, they come from various cultures and various constructs. There is the indigenous community, the Islamized community, the Hispanized community, and the cosmopolitan Afro-American community, but they overlap. Their practice, they overlap. So how will the academy address this? Form is meaning. It is the dress through where communities understand the world. It evolves from long, complex processes. Engagements differ. With the same form performed to another community, meanings change. Now the challenge is, how will the academy address this? Therefore, we will have to define what constitutes Philippine. What does it mean? What is performance? And as a subset of performance, there is theater. Is that definition of theater with the typologies and the classification, theater truly reflective of the performance culture of Philippine society? Therefore, what is the academy? So these are the three concepts that we will have to define: Philippine, theater, and academy in putting up the academy before we really can strengthen the roots and the frameworks of what we intend to do. I will now use the metaphor of the weave. Various colors and threads mix to produce patterns. Patterns produce a design. Designs compose the whole. The whole is the tapestry. This is what participants experience. They distill meaning. Meaning is determined by their own nurturing. How merged words, images, and action have become a part of their upbringing and an environment that creates its own meanings. Meaning shaped through this interconnectivity, like threads and colors in the tapestry. Gaining meaning produces responses. The responses are what the tapestry expects in the first place. Meanings and responses and intent field are experienced because a participant grows up in a world that has signified these meanings. The process is myriad. That is between the reader and the text, or the perceiver and the performance. And of course, a culture. Understanding involves an array of signs and intermingling that devolves meanings only through the combinations with other signs. Performance is a dynamic combination of text, moving, combining, adding, and subtracting. The study of performance interlocks disciplines. Performance, like language, cannot be text alone. Our foreseen academy will grapple with cultures and their signs and meanings. We have to be ready to come up with our own pedagogy, understanding intertextual processes like transcreation, transdisciplinary studies, the production of performance, integrating media, process and participation of meanings produced in an environment of myriad texts, unless we limit ourselves to the urban cosmopolitan locations. The academy should blur disciplines and overlap boundaries. One discipline cannot be conceived without the other. Literature with language, linguistics with literature, language with literature with linguistics, performance with literature, and all others wrapped with culture. A performance environment is surrounded by text, time, space, the mix with other texts, a backstory, the perceiver's position, the creator's perceived position, structure, and most significantly, the participants, artists, and audiences, which is the other half of the performance. Fragmenting disciplines invites obsolescence. In fact, the academy should be anti-disciplinary. Our discourses will define the future of an academy truly reflective of our varied forms, intentions, positions, methods, and contexts, our performance cultures. So my last note, the Batangas Subli is not the dance troupe Subli. The San Miguel Comedia seeks blessings, not applause. Tausug Pangalay integrates the Holo community, as do the Waray Siday or the Scottish Salid or the Manobo Tigani. Bantugan sense is not of the character of Strindberg's plays or other characters in naturalism, nor is it the motivation required of the Chekhovian person. The dialectics of Brechtian theater is European, even if he was influenced by the Chinese opera. Grotowski will be nabuang in Iligan. Euripides cannot risk being an iconoclast, nor Molière or Racine. The Darangin performed in classical ballet will demean Maranao values. The chromatic scale of 1-3-5 harmony will never fit in the Maranao Bayok. There is no such thing as Asian theater or even Muslim dance. What then can we make of Mindanao theater? Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madamo nga salamat, Tibo, Dr. Stephen Fernandez, for such a rich discussion on Philippine theater and of course his vision for an Academy of Philippine Theater. So salamat sa paghabi for presenting a weave of what your idea of an Academy for Philippine Theater is, exploring the what, the how, and the why of this process. But more importantly, very intriguing ideas, because the academy that is in your mind is academy that is not only interdisciplinary, but multidisciplinary, but also even anti-discipline. So what kind of process will that be? So I'm very curious more of the process rather than the output of a final academy. So we will listen to other panelists, will also intertext with the presentation of Tibo, so that eventually we can come up with a synthesis from the educator's mind of what a theater academy is. And so we're ready now for our next presenter. Our next presenter is Sir Anril Pineda Tiatco. He earned his PhD in theater studies from the National University of Singapore. And just to just make it clear, Sir Anril, Sir is his name. So it's Dr. Sir Anril Pineda Tiatco. So Sir Anril was a visiting scholar at the Research Institute for Cosmopolitan Cultures in the University of Manchester. His academic essays are published in the Journal of Homosexuality, Asian Theater Journal, TDR, the Drama Review, Tourism Management Perspectives, JATI, or Journal of Southeast Asian Studies, Critica Cultura, Social Science Diliman, Philippine Humanities Review, Modern Drama, and Humanities Diliman. He is the author of Buhol Buhol, or Entanglement, Contemporary Theater in Metropolitan Manila, Entablado, Theaters and Performances in the Philippines, the 2017 National Book Award finalist for Best Book on Art Performing Catholicism, Faith and Theater in a Philippine Province, and the Alfonso T. Ongpin Best Book on Art in the 2019 National Book Award, Cosmopolitanism, Theater and the Philippines, Performing Community in a World of Strangers. His most recent dramaturgical works include the Filipino adaptation of Faust, Peter Gynt, and A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing, all for Dulaang UP. full professor of theater and performance studies from the UP Diliman Department of Speech Communication and Theater Arts, and a university artist conferred upon by the UP president through the UP Artist Productivity System Award for his valuable contributions in theater and performance scholarship and dramaturgy. Tiatco is also currently the director of the UP Diliman Information Office. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Dr. Sir Anril Tiatco's presentation.
Hello, magandang hapon po sa lahat. Maraming salamat, Mr. Eric Divina Gracia, for that generous introduction. Maraming salamat rin sa NCCA, lalong-lalo na kina Ginoong Ricardo Labad, kina Ginoong Filimon Blanco, kay Benilde sa Quesada Pang for organizing this wonderful conference. Maraming salamat din po sa lahat na nakikinig ngayong hapon. So, sige po, simulan na po natin ng presentation. Okay, so this presentation reflects the possibility of instituting a National Academy of the Theater, or the National Theater Academy, which, as I understand it, is envisioned as an institution that will organize theater artists, teachers, and academics in the Philippines together. In short, the possibility of a professional federation for theater people in our country. To provide a glimpse of my personal notes or commentaries, I'm answering 3 questions posed by the organizers. Honestly, the questions which you see right now on your screen, they're daunting, but I'll do my best to pose some insights about the potency of such academy. Right, so let me first describe where I am coming from, because whatever is shared this afternoon comes from these positions. You heard a while ago my bio note, and obviously my theater life revolves around performance research and dramaturgical practice at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. I am also a firm believer that the theater is a social and cultural idiom assisting to understand the self, the society, and culture. In addition, I'm also an active member of the International Federation for Theater Research and a core member of its working group named the Asian Theater Working Group. Now, from these positionalities, my conception of the academy is patterned after my academic position at UP Diliman and my active engagement with the IFTR and the working group, the Asian Theater Working Group. And having said that, I believe the general mandates of the academy must include the following: serve as the professional organization of theater artists, teachers, and academics in the Philippines. Secondly, organize national academic and artistic gatherings, such as this one, conferences, symposiums, and festivals. And then establish working groups or smaller organizations for specific research and creative projects. For instance, siguro a group of performers who are into children's theater may organize themselves as a children's theater working group, or a group of scholars whose research of interest are rituals and festivals, they may organize themselves as the Ritual and Festivals Working Group. Okay, and then there's also the assistance, or to assist members to obtain grants and funding from foundations, corporate and governmental institutions, maybe even to provide scholarships for artists, teachers, and practitioners to obtain higher degree or short-term courses on theater education and theater training. Okay. And then fifth, provide trainings to drama and theater teachers and practitioners, especially to communities in the regions. Then set up a database or an archive of resources for the use of teachers, students, and scholars in Philippine theater and performance. And then publish works of its academic members in peer-reviewed book series or maybe a journal. And finally, to promote the works of its artist members in different information dissemination channels. With the proposed mandates, I now turn to my proposal of the core principles of the organization. And to my mind, these are one, teaching, secondly, research and creative works, and finally, public service. And these are the same minimum requirements expected of a faculty member at the University of the Philippines, especially for those who are under the tenure track. We call them the tripartite responsibilities of a UP faculty. And as a UP faculty, it is expected for us to develop our fields of learning and research by producing scholarship and or creative works of high quality, and by demonstrating our respective capacities to sustain research and creative work activities. For instance, the encouragement of publishing in top-tiered journals indexed in the Web of Science and or Scopus, at madalas may monetary equivalent ang mga ito. We also need to contribute to the learning of students through competent and effective teaching, including updating of syllabi, especially the reading resources of students, because knowledge production and debates on theories and issues are never ending. Every 5 years, may benchmarking at curricular review na ginagawa ang department kasi nga, a theory today, baka hindi na siya applicable. So maghahanap tayo ng mga bagong materyales. Okay, on a personal note, it's important that I also follow the development of theater and performance theory, even methodologies in the production of knowledge, to prepare the future of the students, whether in the academe or in the industry. This is also the reason why it's important for me and my colleagues to participate actively in academic conferences. Usually, new ideas are presented there. And at the same time, access to journals and other databases are important to continue updating performance theories and methodologies. So my role as an academic is to render service not only to the university, but also to the larger community. This means I have to engage in activities that enrich the university's academic life by undertaking public service projects that improve the quality of life, address contemporary problems of society, or generally raise the welfare of the community at large. The question, how are these translated to the proposed institution of the academy? As a teaching academy, I envision the institution as a venue where members are provided the latest theater and performance pedagogy, including the latest theoretical debates in the fields of theater and performance. At the same time, the academy must serve as a training ground for its members to develop curricula and to update syllabi, ensuring within the context of world theater with special emphasis on Philippine society and culture. At the same time, it is important to ensure that their development are beneficial to the needs of the students. As a teaching academy, I also think of the organization as a training ground for collaboration and intercultural encounters, and a space to learn the latest development in practice in the local, the regional, and even in the global arena. Now, as a research institution, I believe the academy must function to assist its members to look for funding opportunities such as research grants, fellowships, scholarships, and other forms of subsidies. At the same time, it is an organization that is envisioned to develop and maintain a database of resource materials, a digital archive perhaps, of theater and performance resources for everyone. I also see the organization as an important platform for the dissemination of research and creative outputs by organizing conferences, lecture series, festivals, and other forms of gatherings significant to its members. Although bawal pa po ang social gathering ngayon, pero in the future, baka pwede na po. In relation to this, I perceive the organization to partner with prestigious academic presses, to print book series and or to publish an official academic journal. With this, the publications mandate or the publications proposal mandate of the organization is fulfilled. It is also important for the organization to produce an official magazine, maybe an online magazine at first, to feature productions and other announcements related to the organization and especially its members. In the context of the University of the Philippines, public service is extension work, and it is defined as a contribution to achieving excellence in social and public service, especially the underserved sectors. Extension generates, validates, and applies knowledge that can enrich instruction and research. Now, as a public service organization, I believe the Academy must extend its support by reaching out to the teachers, scholars, and artists from the regions and the barrios, especially those with no direct access to basic services that the organization may offer. Okay, now as for the structure, I think we should begin by looking at the potential members of our proposed academy. And my proposal is to include any person in the Philippines who teaches, researches, writes, and practices theater to qualify as a member. This means a Filipino citizen or not, as long as residente po siya and is affiliated with any theater institution, whether that institution is academic or part of the industry, okay, as long as nasa bansa po siya, is welcome to become a member. For the purpose of sustainability, like any other professional organization, it is important to collect membership fees. Papaliwanag din po natin yan kung bakit meron din po tayong konsepto ng membership fees. Okay? May mga, sabihin natin provocations lang po. Do we welcome students as members? Perhaps graduate and postgraduate students? Shall we welcome tertiary students? Do we need categorization on membership? Are we open to honorary membership? How much is the membership fee? Is it a lifetime membership? Is it annual? Are we open to welcoming institutional members? These are some important items that we need to discuss and agree upon later on. What about the decision-making body of the Academy? How do we call it? Now, nabanggit po kanina, ako po ay active member ng IFTR. Sa IFTR, meron po tayong tinatawag na General Assembly, and it's the sovereign power of the Federation. It consists of all members of the Federation, and each member has one vote, which can be exercised in person or by proxy, which must be communicated to the Secretary General in writing at least 7 days in advance. The General Assembly meets once every 4 years, and members are convoked 3 months in advance. The General Assembly is responsible of the policies of the organization, but authorizes the implementation of these policies to the Executive Committee, composed of a president, 2 vice presidents, a Secretary General for Communications, a Secretary General for Administration, a treasurer, some ex-officio members, elected executive members, and co-opted members. Now, members of the General Assembly elect the president, the vice presidents, and 10 members of the executive members, while 2 secretary generals and treasurer are appointed and serves at the pleasure of the president. The editor of the Theater Research International, the official publication of the organization, and the president of the International Association of Libraries, Museums, Archives, and Documentation Center of the Performing Arts are ex officio members. Now, past presidents and head conveners of the annual conference are de facto co-opted members, while the convener has an appointment of 2 years in the executive committee. Now, a convener of Trans-Regional Conference is also a de facto executive member with an appointment of 1 year. Suppose I was appointed in 2018 for convening the first IFTR Trans-Regional Conference held at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Other important functions of the General Assembly include the body that has final control over the Constitution and its modification, and any member wishing to amend the Constitution must give notice in writing to the Secretary General at least 2 months before the date of an Executive Committee meeting. In other words, sila po talaga ang nagdedesisyon para sa organization. Ang tanong po ay, can this be appropriated in the context of the academy we are envisioning? I believe we can. Let us focus on the executive committee. Perhaps we can also patronate to the professional organizations in the archipelago. Maybe we can have a president and an executive vice president who are elected by the General Assembly, and then 3 VPs are appointed. Normally, dito po sa atin, meron tayong VP for Luzon, VP for Visayas, and VP for Mindanao. Or maybe in the context of our academy, a VP for Practice and Industry, a VP for Academics, and a VP for Research and Development. And these individuals are appointed by the President and the EVP. We can also adopt having 2 secretaries, one for information and communications and the other for administration. The treasurer is also an appointed officer. Up to 10 elected executive committee members may be elected, and we can include the head of the NCCA National Committee on Dramatic Arts and the president of the Cultural Center of the Philippines as ex officio members in the first few years of the academy. Eventually, we can co-opt individuals to be members depending on the projects we are going to initiate. As for some projects, maybe 2 staple projects in the first few years of the academy's institution. And I'm thinking of a national conference and a national festival alternating every year. Like the IFTR, I see the potential of universities partnering with the academy to host a national conference biannually. Then in the future, if the academy is already financially stable, the academy may start publishing academic books, manuals, handbooks, magazines, and a journal. Then the academy might even start subsidizing research works and creative projects, supplementing the funds that the government partially provides to artists and scholars via the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Maybe in the first year, we collaborate with a university in the National Capital Region, and in the next conference, we invite a university either in Mindanao or in the Visayas to submit a proposal to host the annual conference. Same goes with the festival. Maybe we tap the industry and the community theater groups to collaborate with the academy in hosting national festivals biannually. The academy shall subsidize a portion of the expenses, hence the necessity of collecting membership fees. Are these projects feasible? I'm optimistic. First, there are several academic institutions in the archipelago which offer programs either in theater and performance or related fields. These academic institutions include UP Diliman, UP Los Baños, the Ateneo de Manila University, Liceo de Cagayan University, MSU-IIT, Silliman University, West Visayas State University, Naga College Foundation, Bulacan State University, St. Louis University, Cebu Normal University, etc., etc. And then the list of commercial and community theaters in the archipelago may be tapped and invited to participate in the overall agenda of the academy. In the National Capital Region, there are about 15 registered performing arts companies. We can also include in our list semi-professional companies that are aligned with the objectives of the organization. Dulaang UP and Tanghalang Ateneo in Metro Manila, IPAG in Iligan City, Little Boy Productions in Cebu. The community theaters must also be tapped to actively participate in the organization. Artis and Tarita in Pampanga, YTC and the Vaudeville Theater Company in Cebu, Dulaang Kasingsini in Bohol, among others. There are other professional organizations who have been meeting annually to share the latest trends, development in theory and practice, and address key issues through conferences. I'm specifically referring to organizations such as the UGAT, the Sociological Association of the Philippines, the Historical Association of the Philippines, the Speech Communication Organization of the Philippines, the Linguistic Society of the Philippines. Take, for example, the Speechcom organization. Its members have traveled to Baguio City, Quezon City, Boracay, Los Baños, and Naga City in the past 5 years. The UGAT have met in the city of San Fernando, Cebu City, Cagayan de Oro City, Malaybalay in Bukidnon, Quezon City, City of Manila, Baguio City, Iloilo City, Legazpi City, among others, for their annual conference. So, Finally, I see the Academy traveling from Intramuros to the University of San Agustin, perhaps in Iloilo, to Mindanao State University in Marawi City or Iligan City, to UP Diliman or the Ateneo de Manila University in Quezon City, to St. Louis University in Baguio, to the University of San Carlos in Cebu, to Liceo de Cagayan in Cagayan de Oro City, to Siliman University in Dumaguete, or from the walls of Intramuros to the Cultural Center of the Philippines, to the Community Theater of Tagbilaran in Bohol, to Arte Santa Rita in Pampanga, to the stage of the Philippine Educational Theater Association in Quezon City, or the on-stage at Greenbelt, the home of Repertory Philippines, among other potential institutions, to host a prestigious academic and or theatrical event. So this is my concept of a National Theater Academy. It is an academy where members help each other to learn and even unlearn pedagogies, to develop methods of research and creative works, to affirm and critique each other's works. So maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Sir Anril, for such a comprehensive and extensive discussion on our topic of on theater and education. I think it's very easy to understand the position of Sir Anril as far as the topic is concerned. Sir Anril coming from a university, and for everyone who's coming from a university, we're all familiar with the tripartite functions of the university as instruction, research, and extension. But these tripartite functions can either be threefolding, happening at the same time, or in terms of creation, may start from research, then teaching, and eventually community engagement. Much like what we do in theater, we research our materials, we transform the materials into text, and provide context, and then eventually perform to a community. So Sir Anril did not only ideate, but he also imagineered what an academy is by providing so much information, not only in terms of what is taught, but the forms in which it is expressed as a formal organization, as and of course identifying membership, structures, and then he's already saying that this can happen because we already have semblances of an academy with a school-based theater, community-based theater, professional organizations, and of course schools teaching theater. So this can all be inspired. And I take your challenge of hosting your second biennial conference in 2024, as you mentioned, as University of San Agustin in Iloilo. Should that happen post-pandemic, or hopefully with the end of the pandemic. So madamong gid nga salamat. Thank you very much, Sir Anril, for your presentation. And at this point, we're ready now to proceed to our next presenter. Our next presenter is Sunita S. Mukhi. She is a theater, film, performance artist, writer, cultural programs curator, interdisciplinary performance scholar, and educator. She composes and performs her poetry, stories, monologues that espouse the redemptive power of the arts with dynamic women as central characters. She continues her curatorial work, arts advocacy, and practice as the Associate Dean for the Arts and Culture Cluster at the De La Salle College of St. Benilde's School of Design and Arts in Manila, and as the Artistic Director of Debbie Diva Productions. She was the dramaturg and artistic producer of Benilde's innovative dance musical based on Ravelo's superheroine Darna, told from the perspective of her deaf brother, Ding Ang Bato. She is the lead in the short films Convenience in 2016 and Morning with Marty in 2018. In 2019, she performed her stories in the Storytelling and the Body Conference in Verona and in the Asian Pacific Dance Festival and Conference in Hawaii. She was the pioneering director of the Charles B. Wang Center's Asian American Programming at Stony Brook University, New York for 10 years, and program coordinator at the Asian Society, New York for 6 years prior. Her book, Doing the Desi Thing, Performing Indianness in New York City, based on her doctorate in performance studies from New York University, is a continuation of her master's from San Francisco State University's Interdisciplinary Studies in the Social Sciences. Her monologue, Ansita Unfinished with Mamacita, appears in the Ecumenical Journal of Performance and Religion in 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Dr. Sunita Mukhi.
Hello, everybody. I'm overwhelmed with what has been discussed. My presentation is a little more, how shall I say, impractical. I'd like to begin by saying that I speak today as a performance scholar artist who happens to have been in the most challenging role of my life as college administrator at Benilde, with the usual conflicts and eventual resolutions between bureaucratic management practicalities vis-a-vis the vision and temperament of the artist. This clumsy performance has been going on for 5 years now, and I must say that it has made me love drama, theater, performance, the arts, ever more so. These queer quarantines have plunged me into a state of melancholia, yearning for the viscerality, the exchange of chemistry or rasa with my students, with the stage, with the generous audience. So thank you, NCDA, DESA, Philemon, Gardi, Tampok, Yata, for making me part of this discussion so I can share these yearnings to dream and scheme with these stalwarts for an Academy of Philippine Theater. Next slide, please. Let's begin with some terms. Academy is a gathering of the learned, the committed, the scholar, the experts, and I feel my colleagues before, who had spoken before, already have described what that can be, how that can look like. I also ask, are we thinking of a theater of the Philippines, or are we thinking of theater that happens in the Philippines? And this is something we can also examine and understand. And where is the theater in the Philippines now? Given that we can't go back to our stages, spaces, and studios for now, but we are surely going back to our studies, because theater education happened anyway and continues to happen despite the quarantine. The new technologies, the mediated media of virtual rather than visceral, are being resorted to. Live productions in the universities and the schools, from grade school to college, have always happened, but always plagued with slim enrollments. And yet we tout that it is important. It's our culture. It's part of heritage. It's the mother of all, much to the dismay of other arts like architecture, which claims to be the mother of all. So what is the relevance of an academy now? If we hold on to the classic definition of theater as a story happening in time and space for an audience, emphasizing a visceral exchange of energies between audience and actors, where is that theater? The new absurd will pass. We shall get back to the stage, but in the meantime, what are we to do? Facebook Live it? YouTube our performances? Virgin Labfest used a media platform. Some of their productions have become part of Cinemalaya, a film festival, absorbed by another genre. Purists may balk, but should they? Interdisciplinarity may save the day. And as has been mentioned by our first speaker, transdisciplinarity. The impulse to do theater, or more correctly, the theatrical, is still strong. To express and engage, the person can act, still perform, but to what kind of audience? And on what stage? And perform what? Next slide, please. We could lament and cry, and I have felt melancholic about this new absurd. I don't call it the new normal because I am resistant. Some have even gone so far to call it a brave new world. I shudder recalling Shakespeare and what he meant by it when it came out from Miranda's naive mouth as she encounters another man on her father's prosperous island, while Aldous Huxley's dystopic novel drips with even more pained irony as a warning against the over-enthusiasm we can have for technological wizardry and the world of order and normalcy that it ostensibly brings. We live in absurd times. We are menaced by an intriguing mutating virus which we have not controlled. So we anxiously wait for the Godot of an elusive, controversial cure amidst the flotsam and jetsam of fake news, contradictory facts, the conspiracy of a pandemic, plandemic, and a looming global fascism. But in the meantime, we resort to this suspicious technological wizardry of the internet with an enthusiasm to find an intimacy to get our work done, to live and to love, like we're doing today. Next slide, please. So I am, despite my melancholia, finding sparks of brilliance. As an extroverted performative person, indeed, I must. I need to learn. We need to lord over these new platforms. Permit me to emphasize my point with two examples of Benildians where theater, or at least performance, prevailed. How theater still happens in the academe despite our lack of acquaintance with our studios, our theater, our classroom, our spaces. Benilde became fully online in March, requiring our extroverted performative students to use these platforms to share and submit their projects using whatever technologies were available to them, whether it was a cell phone, a tablet, a podcast, a radio, a song, whatever. Please let me share with you the next one, please, the next slide. Let me share with you what a student in theater had submitted as a final project, her monologue in relation to the COVID pandemic and the quarantine. Please indulge me, and let's hear Gianna Velasquez, Benilde's theater arts major, in When Will This End?
Hanggang kailan? Hanggang mamatay? Tulong! Kailangan namin ang tulong ninyo. Lalo ng mga nasa posisyon. Hindi kami nakakapagtrabaho kaya wala rin kaming pera. Sa inyo lang kami nakakaasa. Parang ako yun, ibigay nyo nang nararapat sa amin. Nais pa namin mabuhay pero mahirap. Kasi mahirap lang kami. Bakit niyo po ako hulihin? Ano ang nagawa kong mali? Parang ako niyo na huwag niyo po akong hulihin. May pamilya pa po akong papakainin.
But guys, all you have to do is stay at home and do nothing at all. Isn't that what we all want? Maybe you could binge it or order pizza through Foodpanda or whatever. Or what's Netflix going good right now? Just, just chill inside your home, relax. Like, oh my god, that is so hard to do naman eh. So please, stop complaining about this, okay? All will be over soon, okay? Okay? Oh, you're fulfilled. Yes, we have money. My family has money. Yes, I know that I am privileged. But that doesn't mean that I don't understand or even try to understand what other people are going through. I have a heart and I have a mind. I know what is right from wrong. And I will keep fighting for equity and justice for my fellow men. Even though we have this whole COVID crisis thing, estudyante pa rin kami eh. And at home, patong-patong responsibilities namin. Kasama mo na ang pag-aalaga sa sarilang kalusugan. It's hard for us to cope up with the situation, plus dealing with requirements despite the lack of equipment and resources. Pero there's nothing we can do about it but to comply because we still need to learn and we need our grades. Ako, kahit ako sa sarili ko, walang-wala na. Nais ko pa rin maghatid ng tulong sa iba kasi tayo-tayo na lang din naman ang magtutulungan sa sakunang ito. Even if there is uncertainty of surviving life from becoming a frontliner, I did not hesitate to sacrifice my life for my fellow men because this is the time when they need us the most. Sinabi na mo wala nang lalabas-labas ng bahay, bakit nasa labas pa rin kayo? Sumarang ni Pasmisi nga, pakita niya nga. Oh, tigas talaga ng mga ulo ninyo, no? Arrestin na namin kayo. Mahirap lang kami.
Huwag kayo mag-alala. Kami ang bahala sa inyo.
Kasi mahirap lang kami.
Different people with habits and tradition that share one desire, one dream, one prayer. People hoping to get their usual lives back, wishing all of this to be over now. The world didn't saw a hell of a hinge coming, not a single soul ever wanted this crisis to happen. People plan thinking of goals from the bucket list, not taking items out from their 2-page shopping. It's supposed to be a trip to paradise, white sand, but just go climbing from the foreign land. Now we here messing up the kitchen, sleeping half a day, back and forth for the past month, and it goes on. When is this gonna end? That has been my question, and that has been my question since the first week of suspension. When is this gonna end? You wanna know what's worse? Here, I'll give you a list. Knock officials, we don't need your words. We need your actions and your empathy for us. The virus is the enemy and never the lives of your fellow countrymen whose will is to live. People are dying, crying and suffering. Officials are lying, sleeping and healing. Can't hear it, can't see it. Oh, come on, check yourself. We should act as one, as we heal as one, yo. 24 bars by Gianna. Yeah.
Thank you for your indulgence with this performance by my student who made her class in Western and Asian theater relevant by responding to the pandemic and her feelings towards that. In the next slide, please, I'd like to introduce you to our artist faculty at Benilde. Since Benilde has been very, very generous in training all of us to become expert online educators. We have gone through training because we'd like to be able to transform our face-to-face interactions into more viable online classes. And part of it is to create an introductory video, which this artist educator by the name of Kaloy Olavides, who is also a performance artist and musician, has created this unusual video, which again, I'd like to share with you. It is a weird and wonderful, unconventional use of the medium to bring out the message of the primacy of the creative over the technological. Because this is how performance and theater can happen in the academe today. We did take it very seriously, our training and our teaching. But of course, we can also still have a sense of humor about it. Indeed, there are more sophisticated examples that abound in your institutions, I am sure. But I present these home-brewed ones because this is what most people can and will do, given our iffy internets, access to gadgets, etc. Because given the dire necessity that the show must go on and will go on, an Academy of Philippine Theater perhaps cannot be limited to live theater. There must be an online component, and perhaps it should be named the Academy of Philippine Performance, because that has not stopped despite the loss of a live stage. As I say this, I'm filled with an optimism. I'm still wistful, but optimistic. Intellectually, we all as members of the Academy as such have now to really rethink what theater is in these times and in these virtual spaces. Next slide, please. New audiences are being reached internationally, new stagings are happening, new choreographies. After all, even when the world was destroyed by Nazism, the atom bomb, Stalinism, imperialism, the Pacific War, which then gave rise to the theater of the absurd, nihilism and existentialism brought about a dismantling of language, which is why I guess Kaloy is totally silent. The linear narrative, the flouting of Aristotelian poetics and realism, UNESCO, Samuel Beckett, Jean Genet, whose innovations are such an integral part of contemporary theater and performance today. Next slide, please. So I guess what I propose to you, esteemed stalwarts of theater, is let's expand the Academy to include these new platforms, and more importantly, to include all forms of expression and engagement that performance brings. Thus, perhaps, an Academy of Performance in the Philippines is what we should look for or strive for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mukhi, Dr. Sunita. Madam Ogid na salamat for your brave assertion of theater in the brave new world. You won't call it new normal. And also the encouragement of in creating new strategies, new stagings in this brave new world. So Dr. Sunita was able to perhaps present to us that the Academy must take into account, particularly in the context of this pandemic, we must take into account forms and platforms as part of our Academy. We have to deal with this, no? Although I have to ask you whether that performance is that theater or is that film or is that in a state of liminality. So we can ask more questions because I do feel that we're in a liminal state between heaven or hell. I don't know what heaven or hell is, but in that particular sense. But you position the Academy as something that will, of course, lead us into a brave new world in these absurd times. And for those who have, I'm sure a lot of you out there are already intrigued by the concepts of our panelists. Please do ask a question. You can list them down, of course, in the comment section, appearing in your Facebook page or in our live broadcast. So feel free to generate the questions and engage our panelists later on. All right. Thank you very much, Sunita. And last but not the least, we have with us the founding director and coordinator of the Theater Arts Program, and now Professor Emeritus of the Department of Fine Arts, Ateneo de Manila University. From 1984 to 2014, he was artistic director of Tanghalang Ateneo, where he acted and directed in over 200 productions. He is also a board member of the Asian Shakespeare Association, the school's representative to the ITI UNESCO Network of Higher Education in the Performing Arts, and currently the president of the Asia Pacific Bond of Theater Schools. Dr. Abad, who recently received the 2019 Golden Leaf Award for Excellence in Theater Education, is presently the Artistic Director of Arete, the Ateneo's Creative and Innovation Hub, where he oversees performance events and initiates collaborative projects in the arts. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ricardo Abad, or Sir Ricky.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Gardy and Hobart and everyone and my fellow panelists. You know, I am quite uncomfortable in giving a macro meta-narrative kind of thing about the Academy. I do not know enough. So I think my approach will be more modest. And I will just talk about my own experience as a theater practitioner and a teacher. And from there, draw some insights on what an academy can do. And I'd like to do this in the way as you see now on the screen. I will give a little biographical anecdote. And I will talk about what could have been the institutional focus based on my experience, what could be the research focus, what could be the performance focus, what could be the academic or training focus, and then come up with a conclusion. So if that's all right, I hope I can have about 3 minutes for each time, and I will make my 15 minutes contribution to this very excellent forum. Let us start with the first one, just a little biographical anecdote. And we can turn off the slide now if you want and just focus on me. Okay. You know, a great bulk of my work has been attempts to Philippinize Western classics. My background in the theater has always been in the classics, not only when I was an undergraduate, but also when I worked with Rolando Tino in Teatro Filipino. And although Tino managed to instill a sort of cultural focus by translating many of the classics, and I was part in many of those, when I had a chance to do my own theater work, what I did was, in addition to the language, added what you call the production. You change the location, this setting, props, costume, but you also added a kind of more Filipino sensibility. And because I am a sociologist as well, I use a lot of what I know about Philippine culture into an understanding of text and the meaning of what play should be. Now, there are many ways to Philippinize Western classics. You can mix many forms. I've done commedia, zarzuela, and things of this sort. You can use contemporary urban Manila kind of atmosphere. You can use many other themes like fiestas and stuff like that. You can talk about political figures, so you can do a Calderon de la Barca and have Era Estrada be an example of a king, and many of these sorts of references you can do. But what I found most difficult to do is trying to merge Western classics with indigenous tradition, with heritage. And I had difficulty doing that because, one, I am not from the province. I have no links to any cultural tradition in my biography. You see, my mother was from Misamis in Camiguin, although I hardly go there. And my father is from Cavite, and we have no, and I didn't grow up in any of these places, so I have no background. Second, I have no network. I have no network. I don't know whom to approach. And I don't know if I'll be welcomed if I say I wanted to join. Okay. Years ago, I met Thibaut at CCP, and I asked Thibaut, can we work together on a project? Because I'm so impressed with what Thibaut is doing in Iligan. And he said, yes, let us do Medea. Right? That was a long time ago. We would collaborate. Thibaut said, I will do the classical approach of Medea, and he will add the kind of choreography and the dance. That never materialized. It would have been a good start for me. But distance, the commitments we had to our own organization prevented that. It was just by luck that in 2009, I met Matthew Santamaria at the Asian Center of Iup, who was doing his experiments on Igal. All right? This is the dance of the Sama Bachao. And I said, Matthew, are you open to the idea of working with me to do a Shakespeare play or any play that we can use the eagle? I want to contemporize it somehow. And he was very open. And together we met, and since we need live music for this and really good training, Matthew introduced me to some teachers from the Sama Bajau, from all the way from Mindanao. We brought them here to teach us. And from the Bonden, we went to Edru Abraham, all right? And then I talked to Badong Bernal to design, and had Galan Luarca work on a text from of the play. And I had the team. So in other words, I had to form my own network. I had to form my own team. It wasn't something that was just there that you could get, okay? And so we did the work. So now after Sintang Dalisa, I said, okay, what's my next project? I want to do something similar. All right, I will go away from Mindanao and maybe go to North, or maybe go to Luzon, or maybe go to Visayas. But whom do I approach? Nothing. I don't know. All right, and I didn't know whether it was feasible to do so. So I guess from this experience, I have sort of one kind of thing that I wanted to see. That if there's an academy, I think it should be not a school, maybe a training center. I will talk about that later. But it should be like a center. It should be like what I do in art, a creative hub with a lot of spaces for conferences, performance, training, a library, museum, a research office, whatnot, many administrative offices. But it should be a center which allows people to collaborate. It should be, and it should encourage people to work together. Encourage people to do research, to perform together, to meet, to clash ideas, to have something, to get academe and get academe in Manila introduced to the theaters of Visayas, Mindanao, and other parts of Luzon. To have what we know about theater seep through there, as Anril, Sir Anril was talking about, serving, things like that. But also going back, all right, and things of that sort. I think that should be the kind of idea that one of the things that the academy should do. It should be a kind of a place that we can all meet and gather, and maybe the suggestions of having conferences, meetings are quite good, and maybe good examples of this. So that's my first thing. So if the slide can go to my first point, that's the first insight I want to do. And the thing is that I suggest, a slide please, we'll go to the first insight, yes. That the Philippine Theater Academy should be like a hub whose purpose is to get people or groups to collaborate and others in revitalizing indigenous performance styles for the contemporary stage. It can do other things, but that's maybe one of the purpose. In fact, I don't even think it should be one center. I think the academy should be a multiplicity of centers. There's been a lot of research about the centrality of cultural centers and how that can drive more distance between city and outside the city. Okay, so if there's a way we can organize this, like it is built on many centers, so that we can go to many places in Luzon and Visayas and Mindanao if we need what we need. But the ideas I have is it's spatially decentralized. It's also like a hub where people can come together. Okay, and that's my first point. Very simple, based on just what I needed when I want to do some work that tries to merge traditional and contemporary styles. The second point I want to make, number 2, is So I will go back. I will give a little background before I read this thing on the text. I'll give you a little background. Our theater, my experience in the theater is that we're gung-ho on performance. We are so big on performance. Our curriculum is so performance-oriented. You learn acting, you learn movement, you learn speech, you learn directing, you learn technicals. It's very performance-oriented. And that's why we have many excellent performances and many excellent designers. You can see from Dr. Mukhi's slide how wonderful the works can be when you do this. But anyway, we also have very excellent teachers of performance practice. But we are not doing very well, but although we are performing very well, many times my sense is that many of the performers do not know why they are performing the way they are performing. All right? There is parang this second reflection of why am I doing this? Where am I going? Where did I come from? The performances are very sort of insular, I think. It's just within the theater group, within maybe Manila or within this, but it doesn't cross. I don't say, where is this going? What is this? Every time I see a production, I say, interesting, but is this something that will last? Is this something that the Philippine theater should be doing? Is it something, where does this come from? Why doesn't it take many of these things, all right? So the thing is, I think that one way you can solve this is through research. And I think Sir Anril has talked a lot about research, and that's very, very important because we have no journal, we have no association. I'm trying with Thibaut and Mr. Mukhi and Philemon, trying to form an organization so we in the academe can think about these things together. But we have the pandemic spoiled our chances, so we have to regroup again after. But we don't really know. For instance, is there a Filipino way of acting? Maybe there's not one way, of course, but there are probably many ways. But what are the ways of Filipino acting? All right. All our theater schools, we teach Stanislavski. That's like American. We teach Western things. Right? Sometimes we teach Brecht. And sometimes we teach, if you are lucky, you can teach Laban, and you can teach Grotowski, and you can teach Barba. Okay? But now, the thing is, how do you teach this in the Philippine setting? Now, Missy Maramara and I did a paper once. And we said, okay, we looked at Ateneo and said, how do we teach Stanislavski? And it's evident that you don't teach Stanislavski directly. Because a lot of the Western approaches assume an individual who can be confidently individualistic, can articulate, is free, is not too deferent to authority. But Filipinos are not like that. We have cultural things, all right? Where our egos, our loob are very sensitive, all right? We don't like to start things. We like collective things, all right? So when Missy teaches acting and he wants to teach Stanislavski or he wants to teach a little Brecht, he doesn't go direct. He goes indirect. You work with the culture. You find practices or pedagogical things that allows you to go sort of going around and then later on do it. Now, that's not our experience, but is that Filipino? Is that the way we teach? Is that the way we imbibe? Now, Thibaut is talking about many kinds of performance pedagogies. I wish I'd known. I know about his work, all right? I read his books and his articles, but if there are many, I don't know about them, all right? I don't know if there's a pedagogy in Visayas or Up Luzon. I have no idea. So you come to me in the academy and my knowledge is very limited. And I hope the Philippine Theater Academy can expand my knowledge and expand the knowledge of teachers to know there are other pedagogies to work with. A lot of many artists like Barba and Peter Brook and all of these things and Grotowski, they learned a lot from Asians, all right? I'm doing research now on psychophysical theater, the use of meditation and other kinds of reflective arts to be able to prepare the actor for performance. And in my research, I find that the leading practitioners in the West use Indian techniques, all right? All right, Indian techniques. And I know one from Mexico who is using ancient Mexican ritual and Tibetan things. And from Thailand, there's a guy there who's doing something on Buddhism. And so everybody's coming with these Asian things. But in the Philippines, I want to grasp at what is it? Silat would be very good, but can I put that in the curriculum somehow? Are there forms of Filipino meditation that we can use as ways of actor preparation? That's things that are culturally more relatable to us, okay? Now, we can only do this through research, and research should be able to answer these questions and to give us a context. People talk about cultural mapping, which is very, very important. People talk about documentation, which is very important. But it's also a way of trying to test things, the knowledge of testing. For instance, will this pedagogy work? Can we have a design study? Say, does pedagogy work against pedagogy B? What would be the result? You know, my background in social research leads me to think that you can use these kinds of designs in making research for the theater rather than simply document and describe. We should really do something a little bit more analytical. Many of our research come after the fact, all right? I have done this one. I see a performance, I did my own performance, and I write about it. Post-facto research. How about before? All right, before even doing this, nag-research ako na itong magandang paraan, ayan ang lalabas. Ganun ang learning procedure, ganun ang performance. All right? So the theater becomes really a practice, a research performance practice, right? It's always like that. So theater is, I will talk about it later on, theater is not only aesthetics. And I don't like this idea that if you see a play, it's only the aesthetics you talk about, all right? Because there's a lot of things, you know, as I said, if I see a play, I know What's the context here? What are you doing? What is the message you're doing? Are you going somewhere or going elsewhere? Are you just doing it for show? I met a Greek anthropologist who was also a theater artist. And he was telling me, Ricky, many times what I go to festivals, and many times what I see in the performance, showing off. They show off their skill. They show off their abilities. They show off their thing. People don't talk about the spiritual dimension of performance, which is to share, to give, to connect with the larger things. All right. And I'm so influenced by that, by this Greek guy who talks about this thing. And since we are both social scientists, we had a common ground in talking about this. And he said, look at the community theater. Look how authentic and how real many of the singing, and when it goes to Greek communities and they sing, perform, it's so real. It's meant to share, to establish solidarity between people. It's not, I'm going to show you something, show you how good you are. I'm going to make you cry. I'm going to make you applaud. It's not like that. And many times the performance gets there, oh, there's something wrong. And I said, one way to do it is to research and a kind of sensibility about the art. That's very, very important. So my next point here, the Philippine Theater Academy should promote, disseminate, and validate knowledge. And we should validate. We give awards for performances. We give awards for individuals, but we don't give awards for research, all right? We don't give awards. We don't have the best, the best of the year shows. Walang the best of the year research. Wala, all right? So we should validate research so people will get into it, see? And we should encourage students to do research outside their comfort zones to be able to integrate this into performance. One of my best students, he's now teaching art management in Singapore. He's from Davao, and then he went to Davao before writing his thesis to work with the community and came back with whole tradition and a myth that he staged with the movement. Wonderful, wonderful. But nobody else did that, all right? So I hope there'll be more people like that to get to do that. And that's my second point. Okay, my third point I want to make, and this is about the third slide. This has to do with performance. I have been with the international circuit for about a little more than a decade. And in those years, I have come to realize that, and Thibaut has also been there, so maybe Thibaut will also be able to validate what I want to say. And I've seen many international shows. And the first thing I noticed is that in most international shows of recent years, that the tendency now is hybridity and fusion. That's the sort of tendency I see. People experimenting with all sorts of things, all right? Now, they don't always come out well. And many times I see this works and I do not understand what they're trying to say. But that's not the point. The point is that they are in that mode, all right? They're in that mode and they're creating, they're innovating. They get the text and break it up. They get the text and do something else. Even the Indians who do epic theater in their classical grand style, I saw a performance in Shanghai or in India where the actors did this epic thing, remember the rhetorical flourish in method acting style. I said, oh my God, look at this attempt. But it worked a little bit, but the point is I loved it because it was an attempt to try to create something new. And that's very important, I think, in performance. What I see now in the theater project, that people are trying to find ways to create, like we saw in Dr. Mukhi's video, trying to create this kind of the hybridity. And the hybridity is putting together traditions and styles, and fusion is the idea of putting it together. There are many ways, of course, to generate hybridity and fusion. You can work with the sciences. I want to work with robots. I heard that I think the BPI or the BDO has a robot somewhere as a bank promotion. I want to get that robot and work with the robot in this online, have a video, a play with a man and a robot, okay? That kind of thing, because I have not seen robots before, and I think we should do it. I talked to the physics department. I said, can you give me a robot, and I want to work with a robot as an actor, all right? That kind of fusion is what I'm very interested in. So I think that one of the important things in the theater is that, that this is, and how do you blend? I think we have to take note, and I think Thibaut talks about transcreation, and I'm all for it. But the whole thing about merging is the idea that we should also act in an ethical manner. So we have to teach ethics. We have to teach how it is to transcreate well, how to be authentic without being inauthentic, and things like this. How to respect the culture from which we draw. This is why it's difficult for me to do cultural works and mixing, because I'm very sensitive to, I don't like to be an exploiter of your tradition and use it for my theater. All right. You know, the other thing is Anne Bogart, who conceptualized viewpoints as an acting style, said in one of her essays, I get my energies from American tradition. Wonderful. I think maybe many of the Filipino theater people should do the same, tell the same thing. I get my energies from working with Filipino traditional performance styles or things like that. That will be ideal. And this is something I think that will be very good. And one more thing about this international thing. The thing is, the international work makes sense because the messages are able to connect globally. All right. So this is very important. If we do theater, we must create a message, a theme, or an insight that is not only good for our community, although some theaters may be like that, but ideally, that should connect outside our world, outside our country. I think Sir Anril will call this cosmopolitanism of some sort, but I think maybe that's what it is. So, but what I really mean is a kind of a local production with a global kind of outlook, so that the production makes sense not only to us, but to the world. And I think it's important to think now, especially after the pandemic, to think of things that we can do for the world. You cannot solve this problem of the pandemic just by the Philippines alone. It has to be globally solved. And the theater must lead the way in saying, we need global solidarity to fight all these global facets that Dr. Mukhi talks about. We have to need global thing to fight the pandemic. We need now, even in theater, ways in which we can collaborate with many other people so we can create a worldwide message. All right. So I think one of the things we should do in the performance focus is the Philippine Theater Academy is not something that is just for the Philippines. It's for the Philippines. It's the Filipinos' gift to the world. I think that kind of vision is very important. It's not for us. It's for us, but it's our gift to the world. It's something like that would be, I think, the best ways in which we can generate good performance and meaningful. So when you tell people you're going to theater because you're not only for yourself, but you're for other people and you're for the world. You're the people of Africa. In the year 80 years from now, the world will be dominated by Asians and Africans. That's your audience 80 years from now. There's a prediction that Germany is going to be non-white, England will be non-white. And that's the kind of idea. And what are we preparing for a world like that? Are we collaborating with all of these things? That's why the Europe fear immigration, because they know there'll be wipeout. That's why China is so aggressive, because they're going to dominate the population and they don't know how they're going to feed their population that's growing and growing and growing. All right. So the point I want to make is that local, global. That's my main point. Okay. All right. Now, 4. I don't get my time. I hope I'm still in time. The 4th one is, of course, the academic. Now the thing is, how do all I said about hybridity, fusion, cultural identity, I think how do we bring that to the level of the classroom? All right. Now the idea is this is where the training focus. I am suspicious about the academy giving a degree. Okay, I think maybe we should give certificates. Maybe we should give, things like that. Professional courses. Very hard for people to go unless it can. It can have some collaboration with the school. Then they can give a degree in collaboration with that kind of thing. But the Philippine Theater Academy can help the schools, I think, build on its theater programs. I said before how it can help, let's say, with cultural indigenous art or with other kinds of art, or the work of Father Gaspar, the work of any other many things, Brother Gaspar, and many. How can we know these things? How can we know these things? I know that the Visayas and the Luzon and the Mindanao groups, they have, we have a tanghal in Luzon, and then we have the Visayas as a group, and then but I can't even go. I don't even know. That's just for Mindanao. It would be nice for me to go to the Visayas and Mindanao to watch what they're doing, because I really want to know what can I bring back to my school after watching that. But the boundaries are I know, Thibault, somebody was saying that it should not be, the boundaries should not be so strict. We should be free to attend these things. All right? And so that's why tumutulong pa sa isolation ng mga regions rather than something that's more mutual. Okay, so the theater curricula should give students the ability to combine the ingenious and the contemporary and to approach international issues from the perspective of local and global issues. Okay, and that's what I think what the theater do. You know, in Malaysia, Indonesia, and India, one of my enviable positions that the first year, the students have training in a traditional dance, traditional music, maybe the traditional forms. Okay, and then after that they take the usual Western thing. All right, but it's wonderful. Not only are they preparing them for jobs because many of them job in tourism, but many of the graduates from these countries are versed with their major cultural styles. Okay, I've longed to give in my department a course in Philippine performance styles. Whom will I get to teach that? Who knows many of these cultural styles and can give a semester course or a year's course in Philippine performance styles? Okay, in Salle, Singapore, they have a course on Asian performing styles. So in one semester, learn a little bit about Buto, learn about picking opera, learn about Malaysian, Indonesian dance. But here, Philippine performance styles. I didn't find a teacher. The best we can have is Philippine drama. So Dr. Jerry Respeto has been kind enough to give that course. So we have that appreciation. But Philippine performance styles. Wouldn't that be nice that Filipinos, that students would know, oy, meron palang ganito. Oy, meron palang, magamit nga sa aming devising yan. That kind of thing. You have to give students clues. If you just give them kind of Western clues and, foreign theater companies' perspective on devising theater, that's what they will pick up. And so when I see a student do devising work and I say, ay, galing yan dun sa complicity. Oy, galing yan sa isang company. O galing yan sa National Theater. You see, it's all right because they're learning, but it cannot be the mas maganda kung ang basis mo yung mismong performance pedagogy at Philippine performance styles na ginawa. And that's all my idea there. The present curriculum now is also skills driven, no? And acting, directing, and things like that. But rare is a course on performance and rare is research. All right, we do not train people to do research. So I wish we can also train students, some of them, to do research and contribute to our knowledge production. Otherwise, we'll be losing mind like this. Okay, and that's my other point, all right? So my last point, and this is the last point, my fifth point, conclusion, is simply this, that the Philippine Theater Academy should be a value-added institution, meaning to say, it should be more than what the schools are offering. It should be more than what the community groups are offering. It should be more than professional groups are offering. All right? It should be more than all of this. Maybe it should be all of this. As Sir Anril says, the membership is quite mixed. But it should be more than all of this. It cannot be the same. All right? And what is this thing that is beyond all of the groups that you see? Unfortunately, I do not have a macro perspective. My life is so insular as far as theater is concerned, and I am not part of this group or that group or that group. All right, I am not. So I do not see what can be above all of these things. How can the Philippine Theater Academy? We can supplement what the schools are doing. We can supplement and add to what the community people are doing. But the idea, I think, is that the academy should provide some sort of a direction on where we are going as alternative, or many directions. It cannot be unilateral, okay? It cannot be unilateral. But these are the general guidelines. We should be here, all right? We should be here. And maybe if everybody can go with that under that banner, maybe they can, oh, this is very much, it's like the United Nations, the millennial goals of 2030, or the social development goals of 2030. Pwede bang Philippine Theater Academy na ganyan? For 2050, we expect these targets. This is our goal. All right? Dapat may goal. Pag walang goal, random yan. We'll just do things that we want for vanity, for our group, for this. It's all kalat. All right? And we'll just say, oh, sa market. Yan, gusto ng mga tao yan, for the market. All right? Well, that's what that you want. We have to be more than that. We have to be more than that. And the last point I want to make, as I said before, as I hinted, we should just be more than aesthetics. More than aesthetics. Theater is not simply away the beautiful. The beauty is important, but more important is the substance of what we're doing. Many times I go to a play, I said, what's the insight here? What is it trying to say? To me, insight is more important than aesthetics. Aesthetics you can do. I've seen very plain productions. Two people up there talking lang, just talking to each other. All right. And it's wonderful. And they argue. And it's wonderful because the insight is people who have different opinions can still dialogue. A very good reminder in this time of polarization, of fighting against the red and the yellows and stuff like that. And that's my mission. How can I get people to talk like that? And that play was wonderful. And it's aesthetically very plain and simple. But the message packs a wallop. All right. So to me, very important is that when we do the direction, what we strive students to learn and what we community is insight. All right. And I've seen Theater Without Borders, non-actors acting to complain about a dam, to complain about deforestation, and they just do theater there, and without skill, with little skill, with crude choreography, but it message packs a wallow. Theater Without Borders. And so this is the kind of theater I think that we have to establish here. A theater of message, a theater of hope, a theater of vision, and that is what maybe the Academy should do. And there are many groups doing that. Maybe the Academy can harness that energy and push that to be a kind of direction for the future. And with that, that's it to my presentation. I hope I am within time. And in the meantime, I bless you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Do not go. The Mass is not yet over. There will be more speeches as we go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ricardo Abad. Packs a wallop talaga yung presentation ni Sir. Thank you for allowing us to join your creative journey or your creative meandering through time and space, because indeed you used your own experience to explain what an academy should be as a creative hub which fosters collaboration, as a center for collaboration, as a knowledge producer, particularly for innovation, as a performance space for indigenous and contemporary aesthetics coming together, and as, of course, an academic space, no? Which, of course, addresses global and local issues or points of view as we understand performance in this world. So, madamo gingong salamat, Dr. Ricky. And now, we open ourselves to this further discussion on the topics that were presented. I can see that there are some questions that were thrown, but before we read the questions, may I turn you over to Gardy Labad for some follow-up questions or probing questions that he wants. I'm sure, Gardy, you're so excited and just listening to these ideas, no? So we'll give you the floor to ask your questions or probe more into the panel's presentation.
Salamat, Eric. Can you just give me 30 seconds na mawala yung aking kodigo? Dali. Sobra kasi.
Madamo nga salamat, no, sa aton nga mga panelists. Thank you very much for such an extensive discussion on what an academy should be based on our own university experience or theater and education. And Gardy, nakita mo na ba yung kodigo mo?
Oo.
Theater and education?
Okay, nagtago talaga after Dr. Ricky. Nag-submerge. Okay. Maraming salamat sa ating lahat, sa inyong lahat. Apat na sobrang napakagaling na mga speakers whose experience in the theater world is just so extensive, so deep, so intricate, but also so substantively beautiful. Thank you for your generosity of ideas, insights, sharings, questions, and most of all, challenges. Tawag ko po in the last 2 hours, explosion of creative energy that's put out in our midst, no? From innovation, transcreation, interaction, migration, a theater of vision, a theater of performance, a theater of transcreation, locally grounded in all those different strands. If you remember from Dr. Stephen Fernandez, we were informed that importante that we must claim our own through our local theater praxis, evolving from local cultural sources, inform, function, process, and representation at various in strategic areas with short-term and long-term programs. He used also the metaphor of hobby or weave of context, boundaries, text, performances, stories, artists, and audiences. Lahat po ay pinahabi. From Dr. Sir Anril Tiatco, napakaklaro din ang kanyang gustong mangyari, ang kanyang gustong pangarap, napaklaro mga policies, mga membership, at organisasyon, no? Nang maski sinong gustong sumali, merong karapatang sumali. Ako na, anong aking internet, baka bigla akong maputol. Si Dr. Sunita, Theater Academy in the Age of the New Absurd. No? How do we lord over this technology? There's one. Ang nakita ko, transformative melancholia, breakthrough creative use of the digital tech, innovation no matter what. There must be an online component. We must use all forms of engagement. At siyempre po, parang volcano. Ngayon, volcano, ang idea si Dr. Abad. No? Very clear sa akin, ang gusto niya academy must be beyond all of this what is happening. Value added. No? Andun po ang challenge sa research, challenge sa performance research. No? It must be a center, hindi lang building, hindi eskwelahan, where we can all meet together. It can be a multiplicity of centers. No? Kasi po, para sa tayong performance-oriented, research-based performance, it must give us a way of testing all of these pedagogies and validate our knowledge. Pero importante ay ethics. Ethics in all this creation. Salamat po. So, with all of that, ano kaya yung tatanong ko? No? Parang nasagot na nilang lahat. Pero meron pong umusbong na tanong. Today's speakers strongly recommended that the future academy will be born out of partnership, collaboration, convergence among theater institutions, groups, leaders, individuals from across the country and from around the world. If we envision this as such, what could your respective institution, your programs, or particular unique fields of expertise contribute to such a dynamic consortium? If you have just 2 or 3 experience-based achievements right now, what will help enrich the development of this academy? What would they be in a sequence from pandemic age to post-pandemic age? 2 o 3 ideas na pwede niyong maibigay kung ikaw ay magiging participant in the creation. Anong sisiguraduhin mo po? No? That will be in the context of the pandemic papunta sa post-pandemic. I hope that will be some substantive query at this point. Ayan.
Who would like to answer the question of Gardy? What are the things that have to be done at this point, given all the challenges of what an academy should be? This value-added organization, institution, collaboration. Anyone from our panel members? Sige, Sister Tibo, you can unmute your mic. Thank you.
Okay, I think we start from one and explore and experiment on the idea of breaking the bounds of the academy first. The biggest contribution, the most significant contribution that our center has given is a paradigmatic contribution that relies solely on studies on performance and cultural studies, but have been adapted for Philippines. And I think because our method is that all these forms and all these styles, as Ricky mentioned, are consequences of a scaffolding that is built by culture. In other words, even the idea of aesthetics, even the philosophy of performance, the engagement is built on that engagement between culture and performance. There is no performance without culture. So we have to start from the platform. We have to start from the scaffolding to make truly our idea of an academy and the forms that constitute what the Academy will teach really truly rooted in our own context. As I was saying, there is always a lot of misnomers, but unfortunately, these misnomers and misconceptions that have born in us come from power, come from the centers, and the centers are not the national cultures. The national cultures is built from the fringes, from streams growing down. So again, I think the basic, the organic thing that we have to do is the paradigms, and everything follows thereafter.
Thank you very much, Sir Thibaut. So roots bago routes, no? Parang we should really go back to our fundamentals, asking questions like earlier you were talking about, of course, what is Philippines, no? The integrity of our culture. And then from there, work towards the expression of that culture in new forms, platforms, and performances. Thank you. Anyone else from the panel members? Where do we go from here? Where do we begin?
Maybe I can add.
Oh, okay, sige po.
Okay, we have begun, actually. We have begun. We have started to destroy paradigms. We have become iconoclastic. Because, for example, the convention or the idea of theater is an idea that was introduced to us. It is an engagement, it is a structure, it is a cultural construct, it is an understanding of a worldview that was introduced to us by our colonial history. Okay, by our colonial history. However, it is a very strong form of cultural identity, but it is a cultural identity that is site-specific. Site-specific. For example, okay, I really would like to pursue, Ricky, yung ating media, really, no? We put up media. It will be raved in Manila. It will be raved perhaps in Cebu. But you put it up in Marawi or in Bukidnon. The engagement will be different because the cultural engagements do not dictate so. You know what I'm trying to say? Forms simply are consequences. And the idea of performance, the reason of performance is rooted not in aesthetics, but in cultural survival and cultural integrity. That is the reason for performance. Survival, actually.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Thibaut. Yes.
I can add. I will
yes,
add something.
Ricky. Go ahead.
I think Thibaut is right. We have begun to talk, but I think maybe to push that to move further. Maybe if Guardian groups can gather together some people, not very large. I think in the usual discussion group to be profitable, about 12 to 15 people. That's about the ideal size. And to talk about the ideas that have been talked about in Tampok Sabadulaan. And just very freewheeling, no agenda really, but the idea is to come up with, in the end, with what ideas, thoughts, insights resonate among this group. Maybe dapat maraming groups yan, maraming 12 to 15 groups. Parang i-sift it. I-sift the ideas. What will come out? What will be and then what will come out will be the core ideas of this academy. All right? I propose in this school, I propose as a hub, but maybe that will not carry in the group. Maybe people want something a little bit more like, I like something like a CCP, but just for theater. Oh, pwede rin ganon, no? But many kinds of ideas can come. But the idea is to talk, resonate, discuss like this. Ano yung nag-resonate sa mga tao? Sa academe, ano nag-resonate? Anong idea? Sa mga community, ano nag-idea? And then perhaps there's a way of then more and more talking result of that. So my idea is further conversations. Further conversations rather than structuring and saying, anong gagawin natin? It's so, that kills the discussion. I think it's better kung parang improvised, parang let's sort of see where we're going. All right? It's like doing qualitative research. You'll be friends, you talk a little bit, and then maybe an insight comes rather than give you standardized questions. So my idea is something like that. More conversations and figure out what resonates.
Thank you very much, Sir Ricky. In fact, Sabadulaan encourages these conversations from various sectors of our own theater theater network. So we thank you very much. So I think we'd like to pick off from some of the questions generated online. We have about 7 minutes before we give it to our synthesis or synthesizer. There's a question from Fer Mutige. This is for Sir Anril. Dr. Sir Anril, did I get it right that your proposal of an academy is an organization of individuals, inclusive enough to all types of practices in theater and performance?
Okay. Siguro to answer that, why not? I mean, alam naman natin sa field natin ay marami tayong sectors. May mga active practitioners, may mga active researchers, may mga active teachers and active academics. And lahat naman ng mga sectors na ito, I guess, they're producers of knowledge. And why not? I mean, marami din naman tayong mapupulot from practitioners, even if I'm from the performance research world. I can get something from practitioners, learn something from them in the same way as, practitioners can also learn from researchers and teachers. So yeah, why not? I mean, kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, yung currently yung international organization na familiar ako, it's a group where members are not only scholars, there are active theater practitioners, performance makers, and they also join in discussions. They also participate actively in theorizations. I mean, even the work is open to debates and to question how the work is contributory to theory and discourse. So yeah, to simply put, yes.
So in other words, all these people in our theater world, no, not just actors, but also scholars, educators, researchers, should continue to converse. And of course,
I guess. And besides, I think here in the Philippines, we don't really distinguish one from the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actor, dramaturg, writer, director, all rolled into one. Teacher. Okay. So thank you very much. This is a question to all members of the panel. And this also comes again from Fer Mutige. So I think in relation to what Dr. Ricky talks about, no, yung value added, no, what can we add to what is already existing? So the question is, what can this emerging academy do that is not yet done or cannot be done by existing schools or universities? Why will this academy be able to do suggestions of the speakers when this academy shall have to spend time, effort, and resources in creating its very existence? So we would like to answer that brave question. So what can this academy do that is not already being done? Yes, Sir Thibaut. What's the value?
What we have not answered? What we have not answered is why. Why the academy? We have not answered that. There's only one bottom line there. Cultural integrity. And cultural integrity equals survival. It's life. We have not answered that. So I think that is the reason why we are doing this.
So sabi nga nila, if you know the why, you will know the how. So it's you start from cultural integrity and pick off from there.
That's correct. Okay.
Thank you, Sir Thibaut. Other members from the panel would like to answer the question.
Let me try a little bit.
Yes, Sir Ricky. After all, you post value added. Nga, ano? Aside from the four that you were already mentioning as a convergence of ideas in terms of how the academy functions.
If we agree that, let's say, cultural integrity is the why, all right, and it's a very good answer to the why, then that is a kind of a direction, a reason for doing theater. Okay, that is what we don't have. That's what schools don't have. A reason, a big reason for doing theater, a direction. The schools kasi, they have their own mandates. I want to do theater to develop my skill, to serve society, that sort of thing. But why do you want to serve society? Why? Walang ganon eh. So kailangan, and in communities, you're just locked into your own little world. But the larger thing is, the larger purpose of doing theater is not there. So we have to figure it out. If it's cultural survival, that's something that the no groups have done. Because no group has the right to do it. Where I'm only in one school, how can I proclaim for everybody, di ba? But if you have a large group like this, like the Academy, mas meron silang K na magsabi, ito ang kailangan natin. Alright? Ito ang direksyon. Alright? Sumunod kayo, ayaw nyo, basta ito ang direksyon natin.
Right.
That's one thing. The other thing that an academy can do that most cannot do is to encourage more of these collaborations, meaningful collaborations in research and things like this. I mean, you know, the NCCA, they have Alianza, they have this group, but there's a collaboration. They only meet during festivals, no? And but walang masyadong activities. And even though I've been a member of Alianza for a long time and I enjoyed watching the plays, I would like to see more interaction among the different schools. Hindi nagagawa yun masyado. I don't know about Visayas and Mindanao. But if you have an academy, siguro the interactions can be more, hindi maybe more specific. Let us say, we want to talk about pedagogy. Today, the Mindanao group will talk about the different pedagogies of teaching community theater. That is something that I would like to go and see what's happening there so we can collaborate and discuss. All right? So I think that's one thing that a group, a big group like that, a larger scaffolding, if we want to use Tibo's term, can provide the smaller groups. That's it.
Thank you very much. Yes, Sir Anril.
Yeah. Siguro, on my part, nandun siguro ako sa pragmatic aspect ng institution, ng academy, practical side siguro ng institution. I think one thing na magagawa ng academy na hindi magagawa ng university ay ang pag-professionalize ng field. This is not something a university alone can do on its own. And then, kamukha na nabanggit ni Sir Ricky, I agree. The academy may be a very good opportunity to share resources. Having said that, medyo madi-decentralize din yung idea natin ng theater and performance. I mean, siguro, speaking about my own practice, medyo guilty ako na every time I talk about theater and performance, parating nanggagaling ang ideya ko dito sa Manila. Kung ano ang nakikita ko dito sa Manila. So what about yung mga ginagawa nga sa mga ibang regions ng bansa? So they're also part of the whole spectrum of Philippine theater. And most of the time, due to lack of resources, hindi rin naman sila nabibigyan ng pansin. And I think the academy is a good opportunity to, kamukha na nabanggit kanina, to store, to provide a sort of a database para magamit ng lahat. Yun nga, basically to share resources with all its members. And then finally siguro, again, pragmatic side, medyo hindi ako komportable sa idea ng industry, pero baka matulungan din ng academy ang pag-institute ng isang theater industry in the same way as medyo malinaw na rin sa Pilipinas ngayon kung ano ba ang pagkakahulugan ng cinema industry. Halimbawa, for me, kahit pa paano mahalaga ito, because eventually itong industry, itong conception ng industry ay magiging way to talk about labor rights and other regulations to theater and performance artists na sa ngayon hindi rin siya malinaw at wala pa rin naman siya. Sa cinema kasi medyo may kalinawagan na hinggil sa rights, hinggil sa mga issues nila at may sumasagot na rin sa kanila kapag may mga complaints sila against abuses, etc. So, malay natin, eventually in the future, institute na rin mas maging malinaw na ang pagpapakahulugan ng industriya.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Doc Sunita?
This is a very enlightening and inspiring discussion, actually. I had convinced that Theater would be actually attached to the academe. But by what Rick said, perhaps disassociated or not academe, also be multi-sectoral and include other non-profits, non-governmental, and even the commercial industries of performance and theater, so that the Philippine creativity, the theatrical creativity, can be nourished and appreciated by all these sectors and not just be dominated by the state or by academics, not just by research, and not just be scholarly, but be actually part of Philippine culture, and supported by its people who practice it and who consume it and enjoy it and learn from it. I'm also thinking that this academy should also ask itself, what is theater? What and why, but more, what is theater? What is it today? Because we are up against, besides the quarantine, the threat that theater faces with other technological arts, which dominate cinema, the internet. It's the live arts. Are they under threat in the Philippines? Can people make a living? We love to perform, but can we make a living out of that? Society is really important, you know? Or is it just, it is important to us, but is it really that important? Is it just entertainment? Does it have an impact, a wallop, you know, bring insight? It reminds me again of classical theater in Greece, in Athens, where they say it was cathartic, but it was cathartic so that people could be complacent and follow what the state wanted, you know? At least that's my take on it. When theater, as well as the arts, should really be critical, transformative, make you respond and react against injustice. So this academy, which doesn't have to be academic after all, actually needs to be more vital and important in the lives of Filipinos. And therefore needs to be multi-sectoral, multi-genre, occupy liminal spaces and interstices, and really ask the question, what is theater? And what is it for now, today, and for the future?
Yes. So basing from your answers, we should really we should go back to our culture, perhaps assert our culture through the academy, a national culture that cannot be provided by existing practices. And of course, perhaps support that culture with an industry, you know, and find new forms of presentation in our contemporary world. So before I move on to our synthesis, let me just mention somebody from the Department of Education made a wonderful comment here. So sabi niya, may special program for the arts. Sana makonsider ng academy on how they could also extend their envisioned programs to schools with special program for the arts, particularly to public schools. So I hope that can happen, and that can happen with the help, of course, of the Department of Education. Time check is now 5:30. Ang lalim, ang lawak ng presentation of theater and education and how it relates to the establishment of a National Academy for the Theater Arts. To give his synthesis for this afternoon's presentation, let us welcome Hobart Savior.
All right. Good afternoon. You know, it's 2 hours and a half, and it's really rich and full of insights and ideas, and of course, praxis and experiences that our panelists have actually shared to us. I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Stephen Fernandez, Dr. Sir Anril Tiatco, and we have Dr. Sunita Mukhi, and of course Dr. Ricardo Abad, for all your valuable and very how do you call it? These are the gems, no? And all your thoughts are very, very rich, and I think we will always have them in our minds, our hearts, even our soul. So with this, I believe that this is Sabadulaan on theater and education, and it's so difficult to absorb everything, but I was so inspired to be with you and to resonate with you. And it is very evident that Dr. Fernandez frames the queries on what is an or the academy in the aspects of theater and or performance, on how will this address the needs of theater meaning making as a praxis, or a praxis, shall I say, a pedagogy and a production. And the theater meaning making praxis stems from the interests. May these be the interests coming from the region or from the local or from the national level, but surely they all represent culture. And we may call it the Filipino culture, reflected on the various creative expressions that include theater or performance. In other words, all these are geared towards or marking our national identity. And I think it was mentioned in the synthesis presented by Dr. Anihan, as read by Mandesa, that she posed a question on who shall consolidate these interests in the formation of the academy, or the Academy for or of the Philippine Theater. There was a caution on the aspects of dictates, for we wish to have an inclusivity and sustainability that stem from participation. We call it active participation. Dr. Fernandez also frames, is the academy determined by who and in which function, and what is it for? And Dr. Fernandez actually emphasizes on how will this academy facilitate the needs, or the other way around. No, he suggests that function should be determined first before defining or forming the academy, and that we tackle first on performance, whether these are rituals or ritualized events, musicals, street dancing, or parades, or any other forms. However, Dr. Fernandez also made sense that the academy is a formalized pedagogy, can even be classic, it can even be structured, can even be working in a system or explicitly defining hierarchy and order, and it can even be an evolution from the Renaissance, modern science and art, and even a long tradition of Asian cultures, right? He mentioned that in his presentation. However, in this aspect, he also asked if all of these that comprise the academy true to all, or even true in the context of Philippine theater. He mentioned about practice, pedagogy, and productions that evolve from culture, and not the other way around. Meaning to say, it's not the academy that determines practice, pedagogy, and production, but it's culture, all right, that actually presents practice, pedagogy, and production. And all of these can form what is the aspired academy. Thus, the academy shall address the needs and the functions in the aspects of performance for social action and performance in education. He even asked, will the academy include or touch culture and performance studies, heritage studies, among others? However, he also emphasizes the bottom line is that this academy should foster and enforce the integrity of culture, our culture. He also asked, will the academy address performance or emphasis on form and its practice taken from the aspects and context of culture and constructs? He even posed the need of defining what is Philippines, what is theater, what is Philippine theater, and why there is a need of this Academy of Philippine Theater. And this has to be answered. We like the fact that he gave us the metaphor of weave or weaving or hobby. It is his metaphor of putting and weaving together threads of colors. May these be geopolitical colors or political colors, context, interest, movements, initiations, and other praxis or processes or practices to come up with a design or designs. all in the questioning ourselves, where is the whole pattern? What is the whole pattern? Is it possible? So the academy should be multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and even anti-disciplinary. Kulang na lang sasabihin niya, pwede din ito magiging anti-academics, no? Because it blurs disciplines and even it actually touches or overlaps boundaries. What can we mean on theater? What are the nomenclatures? What are the paradigms as consequences of forms? He actually emphasized this, and that what can we mean, or what do we really mean about Mindanao theater? It was mentioned during the open forum that knowing the why and the how of these interests of putting up an academy of Philippine theater is also posing what is our cultural integrity. Let me proceed with Dr. Sir Anril Tiatco's concept and proposal. His positionality is anchored on his belief and advocacy on theater as a social and cultural idiom that fosters cultural understanding. His works on theater education, pedagogies, and dramaturgies as practiced in UP Diliman and in the various institutions that he is affiliated with actually are strong foundations of his contributions to Philippine theater. He actually forwards these core principles that include quality teaching. And I think this is really the culture of UP, right? That there must be top-notch and high-quality teaching. To him, in the aspect of performance, in the aspect of theater pedagogies and dramaturgies, and that he uses these for his high sense of research and creative work that actually these are actually extended not only in their circle but also in the larger circles and their networks practically, and they actually offer this as their extension, their public service to improve quality education, to improve also a high sense of the perspective of life or quality of life, and to serve best the community. He looks at the academy as a teaching academy, to train, to provide, to serve, to assist in, to provide venues for collaboration, and to inform with the latest trends and practices on theater meaning making, whether in the local or in the national or in the global arena. And he also looks at this academy or this theater academy as a research academy, which actually gives a lot of opportunities to generate knowledge share, knowledge generation on theater meaning making, even with opportunities to look for funding and also to look into the archiving of and databasing of resource materials. Because we know that we can only be good as our databases, and it is now but time for the Philippines to really, really consolidate the data of theater meaning making or even art in general. And it also provides platforms for information dissemination, dissemination of creative outputs, and dissemination of knowledge sharing. This can be in terms of conferences, can be in terms of webinars, among others, or even gatherings that we know they're actually prohibited now, because of the pandemic. And of course, as a research academy, it publishes these materials, these researches, and these work. And of course, this academy shouldn't only stop as as a teaching academy or as a research academy. It should function to the community. It should be of public service. It supports teachers and students. It supports the local. It supports the members of the community from Apari to Hulo. It should be from Intramuros, as he mentioned. And I was so happy that he actually mentioned our university, Liceo de Cagayan University, as part of the scope and a generation of a collaboration and participation. So in his presentation, he also mentioned on the proposal or his proposal for membership, who comprises this academy, and he presented actually the IFTR model and its mandates, processes, and mechanisms. However, he also asked us if this IFTR model can be effective or can be applied in this aspired Academy for Theater in the Philippines. By the way, he also suggests positions and recognitions of offices, as well as the presentation of possible projects, scheduling, funding mechanisms, collaborations, and participations. And all these are to be inclusive from university to the community, among others. And he mentioned that these are really feasible in the aspects of participation, inclusion, valuation, contribution, collaboration, and convergence of knowledge, consciousness, resources, movements, advocacies, and actions. He has presented various organizations and schools, theater groups, and various professional societies or organizations that can be tapped. And as I have mentioned, I'm very happy that Liceo de Cagayan University is one of those organizations or academic institutions. The academy moves nationally, from Intramuros and to the entire country. And the academy that we together learn and unlearn and relearn, right? This should be an academy that allows us together not to learn and to unlearn and to relearn theater meaning making, pedagogies, all shared to better our Philippine theater. Let me proceed to Dr. Sunita Mukhi. I like this because she defined the academy as the gathering of the learned, the committed, the scholar, and the expert. She also posed questions on theater. What is theater in the Philippines? Theater or the academy is the theater of the Philippines, or the academy is about the theater that happens in the Philippines. And well, with all these melancholic yearnings and the expressions of engagement, I think Dr. Mukhi actually recognizes the new technologies, the new mediated media, virtual, all right, rather than the visceral are being resorted to, as what she mentioned, as I quoted as well. However, she believes that theater or live productions actually remain the highest forms, no? And that these actually engage, the artists and the actors and the audiences in all high energies. The question now is that where is this theater now, especially that we have the pandemic? So Dr. Mukhi also mentioned that since we do not have the physical theater or the physical stage, so we resort to stream plays online, right? Facebook, YouTube, or social media that were actually used by the Virgin Love Fest or the Cinemalaya, right? However, Dr. Mukhi also emphasizes, or she emphasized, that theater persists, all right? And that the interdisciplinarity of theater makes it stronger. It expresses, it engages any types of audiences. And Dr. Sunita Mukhi's melancholia over this new absurd, and to my sense, yields to this novel theater meaning making, or the new form, or to her, she called it brave new world. This new world are taken in the slant of the society that is menaced by this virus, according to her. And well, these are also coupled with controversial motivations, right? Even the finding of the cure, even the fake news, the contradictions, and she mentioned about conspiracy and fascism. However, we are present on the internet, she mentioned that, to share our narratives, our intimacy, to work, to live, and to love, according to Mukhi. With this, Mukhi finds the sparks of brilliance. With the videos presented, actually, these videos testify the spectra of possibilities of Philippine theater. Thus, she poses that the Academy of Philippine Theater perhaps cannot be limited to live performances. There will be varieties of forms and platforms. Thus, also, Mukhi positions that the Academy of Philippine Theater is not just the Academy of Philippine Theater. It can be called the Academy of Philippine Performance. Let us now proceed with the thoughts from the Academy by Dr. Ricardo Amad. His insights are taken from his practice and experience as a theater meaning maker. And he has problems with indigenizing or Filipinizing world's classic, but he's very interested in doing those. Actually, I have seen Sintang Dalisay And that is really a very good example of Filipinizing or indigenizing the classic or the Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, where I think he mentioned, he shared his problems or his challenges in terms of text, local, spectacle, and then of course fusing the Filipino sensibilities. And the merging of the classics with the indigenous sensibilities actually poses difficulties as experienced by Dr. Abad, because I think he mentioned on the lack of exposures or even problems in terms of networks. And then, of course, searching and connecting with people who could help him up until he was able to meet people who had actually helped him for his Sintang Dalisay. So he believes that he has 4 focuses for this academy. Institutional focus as his first point. So then this academy could be a center or hub that allows people to collaborate and work together, to research, to perform, and to exchange knowledge and ideas of theater. And to, like in the aspect of his penchant, revitalizing indigenous performance styles for the contemporary stage. But he mentioned limited to that, right? And he envisions that this institutional focus for the academy can be of multiplicity of centers. Yes, there is no monopoly of this, because I think we believe on the plurality of theater meaning making. It can even become borderless, right? And there will be a lot of centers who could really work for this academy. Now, second focus is on research. The Philippine Theater Academy should encourage, resource funding for research and the value of performance, new knowledge, right? And to build stronger cultural identity and creates platform for innovation and theater meaning making. He mentioned that there. And that he mentioned that if there will be researches, this is also resonant to what Sir Anril has shared to us, that the academy as a research, there must be a journal, all right, maybe an organization of researches, right, and that it will also answer, what are the ways of Filipino performance and what is really the Filipino acting, what is Filipino theater, okay? So it should answer why only Stanislavski, why only Brecht. So here, research lead us to various praxis and practices of theater meaning making. We can go even towards Asian theater, meditation for theater, and we can also look into what is really Filipino practice. Do we have these? So research will actually answer these questions. Do we have really what we call Philippine theater practices, right? So may we have a research before daw kuno a production and not only after the production, right? So he also mentioned that theater is not only aesthetics, right? There is more than aesthetics. There is context, message, direction, vision, philosophy. Theater is not just a show off, theater is not just exterior. It can be an inner coring of belief, spirit, and community. There is an interior sense. And then the academy validates the researches, the generation of knowledge to recognize all our work, all for Philippine theater. Now, it is also mentioned that for performance focus, there must be a recognition of the hybridity and fusion in performance, a mode of creation that is innovative, that fuses text, resources, other modalities, methods, even attempts, even creating something new and fresh, finding ways to create, even if sometimes these are unclear or not really understood well, but there is a presence of meaning making, like that of a fusion of science, robotics, and theater, right? So the Philippine theater can also merge, or pursue intercultural work, right? That merges energies of the indigenous and the contemporary. Now, he also mentioned this, the issue on local to global, or locating your local in the global sensibilities and understanding. Because theater actually is no longer in the confines of our regions. Theater should be creating insights for the global communities. After all, our experiences are not in isolation. We look at the beauty and the potency of our narratives that are our gifts to the world. That's what he mentioned. Theater is the world and the global community, right, or communities. It is diverse, colorful, and resonant to what Dr. Fernandez position on weaving or creating the patterns or the designs. Now, for the academic focus, bringing together theater or bringing theater in the classroom. This can now become our training focus, just like what Sir Anril actually has mentioned. It can even give certificates for courses. It can even help schools in establishing theater programs. It can even supplement indigenous or the contemporary or the traditional or the rural and the urban to be brought to the schools. And the academy opens avenues for the fusion again of the indigenous and the contemporary. Now, I would like to say that the Philippine Theater, according to Dr. Abad, is taken also as a value-added institution that is anchored on clear and doable, achievable objectives and goals so that these aspirations will be attained, implemented, and sustained. More than aesthetics is the message, the insights and philosophy, and the invitation to establish conversation and even a debate, not to learn with or from. Lastly, now this is the general sense that during the open forum was taken or called out from. It is very clear that the perspectives are to be shared and exchanged for learning and knowledge and expertise generation. Thus, the academy is not exclusive. It is not even conclusive. The insights will manifold various explorations as art or theater is dynamic. Pragmatic sense of theater is also positioned or shared by Sir Anril to professionalize the practice or to professionalize the theater practice that universities cannot do it alone. No? Resource management and sharing can be done also as a pragmatic sense for theater, making it more inclusive with the regions so that the regions works for theater or with theater will be recognized and be given opportunities and resources. It is also important that we should now start to think institutionalizing the Philippine theater industry so that we will be able to protect labor rights and other regulations for the welfare of our theater artists. And that includes myself, right? Theater must be participatory. It should be part of the Philippine culture. Part of the Philippine culture that is actually nurtured and sustained by the Filipino, beyond aesthetics, beyond entertainment, right? Actually, Dr. Mukhi was the one who said this, no? And that theater should be critical, transformative, transcendent, responsive to what are the truths of the society and the lives of the people in whatever form, in whatever space, etc. Now, in all the discourse for 2 hours and 30 minutes, the dominant vocabulary is the word insights. I would like to end by saying integrity, letter I, integrity of the nation that stems from the theater of gratitude, right? Hope, tenacity, and service. So that is, I think, to me, is the Academy of Philippine Theater. Thank you very much and good afternoon or good evening.
Madamong salamat. Thank you very much, Hobart Sabior, for your insights, your summary and synthesis of our afternoon's discussion. Indeed, this afternoon we have heard an assertion that a theater academy for the arts must be an innovation that goes back to Philippine culture and assert Philippine culture through research, instruction, and extension in centers and other multi-centers across the country. It is an exploration of form, platforms, and performances in the new brave world that we are facing. And at the same time also, it is imagined as an organization, a center, a school, and all of these wonderful things. I hope that the conversation continues because it is so. And in fact, speaking of conversation, there will be more to come in the coming days. So ladies and gentlemen, dito nagtatapos ang isa namang Tampok Sabadulaan. Maraming salamat sa ating mga resource persons, Dr. Stephen Fernandez, Dr. Sir Anril Tiatco, Dr. Sunita Mukhi, and Dr. Ricardo Abad. Samahan nyo kami ulit sa susunod na Sabado, August 29, upang talakayin ang ugnayan ng dulaang professional or professional theater at paglikha ng Akademya ng Dulaang Pilipino. Makakasama naman natin sina Odi Himora ng PhilStage, Beng Santos Cabangon ng PETA, at si Nanding Josef ng Tanghalang Pilipino. Sa inyong tanan, to each and everyone, mabuhay at padayon.
Thank you. Pagsanib mga bayani ng sining at kultura, lumikha ng sandigan tungo sa kaganapan. Harapin hamon ng bagong panahon, bigyang ilaw ang karimlan. Magsuri pag-isipan ng hulmahan ng ating linangan sa puntahan tungkol sa dulaan. Ituloy ang paghahabi ng kamalayan, paghahabi ng karanasan, paghuhubog ng kasaysayan, tayo't makilahok sa tampok sabadulaan. Ha 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 ha.